Yeah, welcome to another episode of By the Numbers with me, your host, Richard Lewis, and of course, my co-host, Duncan Thorin Shields, live from LA at the moment. We're both living that quarantine life. I've got a bit of a bad head today. My alcohol delivery arrived yesterday. I wanted to test it out, make sure it was free from coronavirus. Bit of a headache, so I'm doing my show in the dark. That's the way we like it. And Sam, whose setup is absolutely appalling for some reason today. Have you changed?
Yeah, I got this new headset tonight, brand new headset, like the best one I could find reviewed. Of course, it's dog shit, where it just echoes and it pops. It's just garbage. It's made by Audio Technica, so which is obviously a decent audio company. I thought that was good.
Audio Jungle.
Yeah, turns out dog shit.
Yeah, you need to get back on that shit one, I reckon.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
to. That's gonna do my Swede in. Either that or just leave your mic open so we can hear you doing bong rips in the background and not paying attention to the show. I mean, either. It's entirely up to you. But look, before we get into the show and talk about everything that's been going on in the world of Counter-Strike, shout out to our sponsors. Go over to .com/RLS. You can sign up to the website there. They're always doing giveaways to encourage new people to come over to the esports betting platform that is a safe, ethical environment. You get your winnings. You bet responsibly. There's limitations to make sure nobody can get carried away. It's a great sponsor to have, and we really like them supporting us. So we'd like you to support them. Obviously, shout out to the patrons as well. We'll be naming you at the end. But look, we've had the conclusion of one of the big, now because of coronavirus, online leagues. Obviously, the ESL Pro League in both Europe and North America have come to a conclusion. And so I thought we'd start the show by talking. Obviously, lots of big teams involved and some surprising conclusions. I would say some surprising results along the way. We won't go too far back. We'll just kind of go back to around about the quarterfinals, semifinals, round about there. But let's start by talking just a little about one of the big stories. I obviously went all in Na'Vi being the #1 team in the world. HLTV statistics bore that out. They rose to #1 as Astralis dropped off. They obviously won Katowice. I was waxing lyrical about them on this podcast, saying they're going to win everything. That was in a pre-COVID world, but no excuse for this. And they weren't able to power through. In fact, honestly, if you look at the games that they lost in this league over the course of it and the maps that they dropped, it was actually a little bit of a struggle for them at times to make it as far as they did. And this is still with Simple in absolute top form. They were eventually knocked out by Fnatic, losing 2-0. We'll talk more about Fnatic in just a moment. What do you make of Na'Vi's performance in the league? I mean, is this about where you would have placed them, or do you think this is a kind of disappointing crash to earth after the excitement of IEM Katowice?
No, I mean, I definitely think this is under the level I expected from them. Like, the idea they didn't even make the playoffs is outrageous. I don't even know how anyone could have predicted that. I don't think anything from LAN suggested as much. And they looked like they was on such a heater going into the Katowice tournament. Then they just continued on with that. So, like, I think part of this could have happened on LAN, but the only part in that sense is, like, the firepower sometimes falling away. That's not crazy because this team had unbelievable level of firepower when they won Katowice. Like, if you tell me that Boomich and Flamey aren't going to continue to just drop massive numbers, yeah, that's plausible. But even so, like, just the depth of skill that they have in this team, I thought they would win more of these games just even for fragging. Like, I do feel as though part of it is like it's online. One of the things I know nobody took into account, I never saw a single discussion about this the entire online league season, was is this how long it has been since people have seen online play that they forgot that we're not all on equal pings and we're not all on the same routing, etc. Like, if I had to guess, I would guess teams from CIS region probably have worse routing to whatever servers we play if we're playing someone from Denmark, for example. The Scandinavian region famously has always had amazing both ping and routing, and the key thing is the second one usually, because that's where you don't get any packet loss, you don't get any problems with the server. So I would suggest already that Nordic teams got a big bump in that regard, whereas I would imagine teams, I mean, there is no fucking relevant Polish team anymore, but if there'd have been a Virtus Pro, that's also one of the reasons I thought they always struggled online. So I'll throw that factor in as well. And then I also think, and this is something I don't think you can discount, because one of my problems with leagues in the past isn't even just the online part, it's the league part. It's that when you play a league, it gives you this illusion in your brain that all the games in the group phase, like the league portion, are kind of the same, but they aren't actually. Like, for example, the last game against Fnatic, essentially here was your championship. you lost it, and that fucked you out the tournament. But your brain kind of does feel that way. And so it doesn't have the same ramp up for me as when you play in a tournament and you're in the playoffs, and it's like, right, I'm in the round of 8, I've got to beat this guy, and I've got that. So I feel as though it's also really, really hard if you're the top teams to actually have the same focus that you would for the big match as you would on LAN. I think that's why Astralis ended up being somewhat underwhelming in moments in this tournament. So I would just say, as a spoiler for how I think about the rest of the tournament, if I look at the teams that did the best online, it was just the most consistent teams. It was Fnatic and Mousesports and Astralis. These are the teams that have very consistent LAN placings, very good matchups against most teams. So I do feel as though online sort of fucked it. Like, I'm not one of these people who saw this Na'Vi performance and was like, right, kick this guy, get this guy. And like, I would, if there was a LAN in a month, I'd say do nothing. Just give it a good another go.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a weird one. I saw Simple as well, was on Twitter, kind of seemed a bit disappointed.
He looks a bit depressed, doesn't he?
Yeah, which is weird. You would have think things are kind of on the up for him. I mean, he has won a major trophy. This is a good young team. He seems to have all the players around him. I wouldn't read too much into finishing 4th overall in the ESL Pro League, although I think they should have ultimately made the finals just if you put all the teams out on paper and assess current form and everything. So a little bit disappointing, but yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think Na'Vi, I still, I'm 100% behind what I say. We don't know what the COVID landscape's going to look like. We don't know what land's going to be coming, who's going to be able to attend because of travel restrictions in their country. It's going to be a very weird time for Counter-Strike for the next 3 to 6 months. There's no doubt about it. That's even if we kind of get back to some semblance of normality within that time scale. Counter-Strike's going to have a lot of events pushed further forward into the year. The end of the year is going to be chaotic and carnage. We're going to see actually probably people having to pick and choose what events they go to based on prior commitments. We'll probably talk a little bit about that in a moment. So Na'Vi have got an opportunity here to still enjoy this kind of period of form for as long as there are events going to be coming up. Most of them are going to be online. I would have thought, honestly, that plays to Na'Vi's strengths a little bit with some of the players, maybe not having that level of experience, especially Perfecto, but whatever, I guess. We're just going to have to wait and see. But I was very surprised to see them in 4th place, especially given the teams that finished above them. I really felt this was there for the take. One of the team I just want to talk about here, they finished 5th overall. We don't talk much about them on the show because I think, as you said on Twitter, that they're just fucking boring. Seems to be the big problem with them. And that is FaZe. Obviously, they finished 5th. They were able to finish 5th in the 5th to 6th playoff by beating OG. But it was a very close, hard-fought series. It was 16-13, 16. Obviously, anyone who knows anything about professional Counter-Strike knows that means that 1 or 2 rounds have kind of eluded you, or there's an eco round in there, and that pretty much pivots the whole map. That's what happens at pro Counter-Strike levels. But they didn't look a million miles away from OG, who are a new team. And when you consider in that match, OG had a couple of terrible performances from Issa and NBK. They were really off the pace. I think they both had like 22 kills each across 2 maps. Very poor for players their experience and caliber. It could have gone easily the other way if one of those players was just able to step up and turn in a kind of average performance rather than one below their capability. FaZe, on the other hand, are a team that, for me, I think everyone got hyped when they won the Blast, and everyone was saying, FaZe are back, they're going to do this, it's all going to click, Brokey's come good, Coldzera's in there. The reality is, FaZe's skill ceiling still feels very flat, like it's very pronounced. They very rarely beat the big teams in the big series when it matters. And yeah, they can beat an OG in a 5th to 6th playoff in the ESL Pro League, but who gives a fuck about that? I mean, certainly FaZe should be aiming a little bit higher. I still think the roster has a few problems. I mean, Brokey has definitely been a good player, but in terms of being a star player or a FaZe level player, I'm still not 100% convinced. And Olof Meister, it's the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to say that he's had long enough now to get back to peak form. Anything that was going on in his personal life is now behind him. But he's never got there. He's never even looked close to the player that he used to be. And if he could play at like 65% of what he used to be, I think FaZe would be in good shape. So a bit of a disappointing finish with them finishing 5th. But honestly, that's kind of where I see FaZe in the world rankings right now overall. They're decent, but just not good enough to ever really trouble the podium.
Yeah, this is why I didn't overreact to that brilliant first group stage they had in Blast. Not least because one component of that was that Team Liquid looked terrible. If Team Liquid had looked awesome and they'd beaten them twice, yeah, I might have gotten hyped. It might be like when Na'Vi came the next week and did awesome and beat Astralis and Vitality and won the group. That wasn't the case, though. So Team Liquid gave them the fucking alley-oop for that group stage. Then they went to kind of eat, say, yeah, they looked good. Yeah, they played well against Na'Vi. Still lost, though. Still didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Still didn't do any of the things people want to do. So when they continue on here, where they finished is actually quite reasonable for their team. That's kind of where I would expect. Like, yeah, I thought they had a chance against Mouse. That one could have probably been a swing series. Most of the teams that beat them are teams that probably should. My problem with this lineup is the reason why I find them boring, which might sound counterintuitive to most people because it should be the opposite, right? They've got all the star names. Obviously, Nico has fucking sick pop-off performances. That should be exciting. It's not exciting when you know what the result's going to be. It's not exciting when you know that he can drop any amount of kills. He could have 0 fucking deaths in the game and he'll lose the game against a good team. Because that's the problem with FaZe Clan is they aren't a good team. They have good players. You could probably take any 3 or 4 of these players and make a really good team out of them. But that's the joke. You would take inferior players who are really good at specific things, an IGL, a fucking role player, maybe just a pure entry fragger. And that's how you'd make a better team than FaZe currently has with bigger names and more expensive players. And the whole Olof Meister angle, I'm so sick and tired of CS royalty who just get to have like 3 years of being shit and they never get called on it. Here's how you know Olof Meister fucking sucks at Counter-Strike Global Offensive in the context of being on a team like FaZe Clan. Normally, when a player is obviously whack like that, and even the fans keep saying every time you lose, well, he's a bit shit. Normally, all the other pros come out and construct a little bullshit narrative like, well, you guys just don't know what he's doing on the server for them, or, you know, he brings like an intangible element as a person that brings... No one's even saying anything because it's just awkward at this point in time. It's actually just embarrassing for even people who supported him at this point in his career. And I'm also just sick and tired of this whole angle where if you are one of these legendary players, people don't actually judge you by are you good enough at your job. They just try to find a reason why you're not the sole reason your team loses and therefore you're allowed to keep getting salary. I don't get that at all. The second I'm bad at my job, I want companies to fire me and no longer work with me. I would hope you wouldn't just keep paying me a top salary just because I have a big name or I had a nice legacy or it's something to do with branding, etc. I'd hope that actually it would be a meritocracy to some degree, even though that's a somewhat idealistic and naive idea for the world. So I do think Olof Meister's an obvious cut. I would cut him pretty much immediately. Anyone saying all that nonsense of like, yeah, but he's still a great role player, make me a video. Go on, then go and do your Sean Gay's impression. Make me a video where you show me how he does all that, and maybe you can convince me. But I would just say the eye test isn't telling me any of that stuff. Then you add in the other players. It's like realistically, this team has gone nowhere because like, how do they progress? How do you get much better? You don't have a proper IGL. It's just a bunch of good players. It's the same problem FaZe has had for like 3 years now. They mix some of the things around. I'll give them credit. I'm sure Yanko's doing stuff, but I don't think it ever goes where they think it's going to go. And at this point, I don't know what more excuses you can have. Like, because this isn't just an online thing. This was happening before they were off online. This is all of last year. It's the last 3 years, let's be real. And the real joke of it all is, and this is what I love, is if everyone's going to live in denial and keep saying this lineup's good and argue for every single player, good cocksucker, keep this lineup, and I'll just keep watching Mousesports with the player you kicked out, and then some of the players who shouldn't even be in that team, if some of your players hadn't helped fuck them over people who would have joined, I'll just watch that team keep beating you and outplacing you, and I'll have a massive smile on my face, and you can have a corker smile and shut the fuck up.
I was going to say, I mean, it is ridiculous the number of times Mousesports did it again in the ESL Pro.
I'm loving that shit. I'm loving that revenge tip.
Every time it happens. Because you know Nico obviously really wants to win that particular game, you know. But I sent Sam the graph of Olof Meister's career. I mean, just in case a lot of people are like, one of the things that when you criticize a player and the intangible argument comes to the table, people might go as well, you're not even looking at the numbers or you're basing it on 1 or 2 series. Like the
numbers are ass.
Yeah, the decline in his performance is so stilted that when you look at that performance graph, going all the way back to, you know, that legendary 2015 team, kind of let's call that the peak, and you look at where he is now, it's like it's unbelievable, like the decline. He's had a couple of like resurgences along the way, but now he's at a career low point in terms of the numbers. And it's just like you say, I do believe in this concept of esports royalty, and to a degree, I think where me and you might differ, I probably do support it a little bit. I think if you've shown a propensity for greatness in the past and you've got there, maybe you do get a few extra chances. Maybe people are willing to turn a blind eye for a few months, maybe even a whole year. But in the same way we were very critical of Guardian, who was absolutely terrible in his return to Na'Vi, you know, the sad reality about FaZe is that it's not even brokey. They brought in a young guy, a rookie, and he's getting shit done on the server. And Olof Meister now is in all of these, you know, kind of like, you know, if people say, oh, he's in the shit roles. Yeah, he's in the shit roles because he can't hold any other role, like on the server. He can't step up to the plate and be a star player anymore. And you have to ask yourself a question about whether or not you would rather go out and get some young upcomer that can do a job and do the bitch roles and maybe do it more proficiently, and you get to pay him less, or you can keep overpaying this guy who's, like, unfortunately just a bit washed up now. I don't think he'll always stay that way. He's 28. I think he still could have a couple of years left in him where he could go and contribute to a team. I just think it's never going to happen in this FaZe lineup. And the
it should
longer
be a different
leaves,
team, though. That's the thing.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, totally.
Should be a nip or someone, you know, where it's worth a flyer. Yeah, we'll take a crack on him. Maybe he turns it around. And the problem is this: the real question we have to ask ourselves is, who does FaZe Clan think they are? If they think they are a team that's the 8th best team in the world and they're just fucking around a bit and maybe Nico can just enjoy playing with his mates, all right, cool. Yeah, this is the right team. You've done it. Well done. If you actually want to aspire to be the #1 team in the world, these are the tough choices you got to make. Yeah, like if I took the nameplate off and it didn't say Olofmeister and that same graph said AZ, every fucker in the scene, even pro players, would tell me you should be cut. They would tell me all sorts of shit like, it doesn't even matter what role you do, Thorin, those numbers don't justify it. Like, they'd tell me all that garbage. But as soon as I put the word Olofmeister on there, the magical spell happens. You remember Fnatic. You also remember, by the way, in the early days of FaZe, where he did transition to being a role player. He was doing a great job. And I can understand why people like Nico back then were literally telling us behind the scenes, like, he's the best player to play with. He's, you know, he knows exactly what he's doing and the way he harmonizes with people's. I mean, Nico would never say harmonize, obviously. Good. Whatever. You get my premise. Basically, I could understand why he, at that time, it was plausibly he'd rejuvenated his career. But even if he's done all that, then the same career that was changed has now just gone down performance-wise. So eventually it has to hit a point where it's not good enough anymore. This is one of those ones where if anyone's still arguing with you, it's time you went on the attack. Spin it and go the other way and say, right, what numbers would he have to reach, or what things in the game would he have to do or be incapable of doing when you would cut him? And what you'll find is anyone still arguing for Olofmeister has no answers to those questions. They essentially would let him go to any amount of numbers. I mean, we saw this with the Hunden case. Everyone was a bad guy in Mad Lions for cutting Hunden, despite the fact he had mathematically some of the worst stats you could ever fucking have in Pro Counter-Strike. And these are the same people who claim to cite stats.
I think he is, yeah, I think mathematically he's the second worst pro in the HLTV database.
It would make sense.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was something like that, you know. And obviously, I just didn't interview the guy. I love the guy a bit, but you know, he said himself in that interview, like, very frustrated with his own levels of performance, and it wasn't that he wasn't practicing. It was he was practicing, and that was still the end result.
That's why, if you notice, when it is a Hunden, a Gobby, these sorts of level get right, when it's these players, I never criticize them personally. I'm never like, this guy's fucking doesn't need to step to the plate and do it. Because if I know that they actually are really dedicated pros, you put in all the hours and they happen to just not be good enough, then it's on the team now. Now it's up to the team to realize that this player isn't who he thinks he is and can't be, unfortunately, and make the responsible move. Because another angle with it is, as much as everyone might think who's a fan, well, no, you should try and play as long as you can for as much money as you can. Well, the same people are the ones who are then going to go and read all the hate threads about themselves and feel terrible about themselves. So is the money even worth it at that point? Wouldn't you rather just be a really cool veteran on a team that doesn't have the same expectations and you can contribute to?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think his future obviously lies in a return to Sweden. I definitely think there's some slots for it. Can never be Fnatic, because obviously we're going to talk about them. They're in such a great place right now since the return of Golden, that I don't see them making a roster change for the 4 season. But like you say, there's going to be other options for a player of Olof's caliber, and you get to. Sometimes when you can't be the star, you can still get a lot done with that veteran status, and you can put the right players around you to sort of take advantage And do yourself a fucking favor, honestly, you know, and actually put yourself in positions that you want to play where you can shine. But you know, you've got players around you who can do the heavy lifting if you have an off day, which is more likely as you get to your late 20s, early 30s. It's just how it is. But yeah, disappointing finish for FaZe, but not an unsurprising one, I guess. Let's talk about Astralis. Been a weird 2020 for them. And it was no different in the ESL Pro League. There was a period where you thought to yourself, well, okay, they're there, they're in the playoffs. They beat Mousesports 2-0. And then to set up a rematch against Mousesports, essentially in the semis of the tournament for a place in the final. But they lost that one. So that was a clear example of Carrigan doing his homework. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was a clear example of Carrigan doing his homework. But let's just talk a little bit about the storyline and the context of that series. The first time they played them in stage 2, it was 16-3, 16-1 on Inferno and Dust 2. Absolute brutalization. And this was a glimpse into not just an Astralis that was playing very well. I mean, Magisk went absolutely off. I mean, in so few rounds, he dropped like nearly 50 kills. It was like ridiculous. Like it was over 40 anyway. This is a guy who like was just on point that game, and nobody else got close to that level on Mousesports. It was embarrassing. A lot of the Mousesports players had to come out and say, "Hang on, people are saying I'm quiet."
They basically
quiet,
had to
Sam?
meme themselves because of how.
Yeah, they had to. The hubris.
It's the right move to do. It is.
Yeah, like you can't style that one out. You can't lose 16-3, 16-1 in a series against a team that's ostensibly level to you, and kind of like just walk away from it. So obviously they were very open about how bad it was. Then when it came round to the rematch, very different series, very close. Mousesports won that 1-2-1. There was a great overtime game on Dust 2. They were able to take that information, assimilate it into their game plan, and then they lost on Inferno, and then they beat them on Nuke in the decider. So Astralis overall finished 3rd in the ESL Pro League, and I guess kind of with everything that's been going on with the team, the weirdness of the 6th man coming in, the overall poor form, the performance at Katowice, there is a bit of a strange cloud over Astralis now, and they don't feel like a safe bet whenever they go up against top-tier opposition. You kind of feel anything can happen. In fact, I was betting against them consistently in my rivalry predictions throughout because they have shown a capability to just lose to even teams that aren't really on the same level or shouldn't be on the same level. You know, in the build-up to this, they did lose to Na'Vi, they did lose to Fnatic. They didn't look convincing in some of the games that they won. They gave up a lot more rounds than they usually did. So I was expecting Mousesports to win this one. But overall, I kind of feel that this is a very strange place for Astralis, and I think we might be witnessing the diminishing of that, fantastic core, that essential core that's been one of the greatest cores in CSGO history. I mean, it had to happen at some point. We thought it was over with the Astralis era. That seemed to give them a bit more fuel and a bit more fire to climb back to #1. But in many ways, it's arguable it was a false dawn. And I think 2020 is going to be not a tough year for them, but a year of decline. What do you think?
I think they've got problems inside and outside the server. Like outside of the server, as far as I'm aware, their company's in deep fucking shit. We mentioned this on the last episode where they're literally lying and saying that everyone in their company's voluntarily taking a 30% pay cut. Like absolutely nonsense premise, by the way. And even the idea you dare say that publicly, it's like it shows the level of contempt that I actually think even some of the top people in that organization have for the other people in their organization. So fuck them. Then there's the whole angle that this Essetag move, right? That's a brilliant distraction because now the whole thing becomes about like, but why Essetag and what would they do to Essetag? How about this? How about it's a brilliant way to smooth the decline so that instead of going to, I mean, there's not going to be any lands in a month, but say there had been when you were buying this guy, say there was going to be a bit, we're going to start the land circuit up again and we're going to go to 3 or 4 lands. And you know what? The real Astralis, if they'd gone those 3 or 4 lands, would have had some bad results and certainly wouldn't have won most of those lands and would have immediately been questioned as to whether they're good. But imagine instead, in between them, you slide in the Odessa tag land, or you seem like, you're working on things, or maybe even making a real 6-man rotation. One tournament he plays instead of Magisk, next one he plays instead of Dupree. Now now you have a brilliant excuse to always be, well, we didn't have our real roster. You know, we're working on things. Be a clever way to kind of mask your decline, because the decline's there to me. And I think as well, like, here's the funny thing. They're a team where I can see them gaining and losing from the whole patch update, specifically the Krieg element. Because, for example, Magisk, the player, is going to definitely be hit by the Krieg. He was one of the best Krieg users in the whole world. But I do think as a team, this patch could actually slightly prop them up. Because when you get rid of that many T-side Kriegs, you make real tactical teams actually have more agency in the server. They become more effective. And there's also never going to be a Krieg on the other side that you're facing against, which is a tactic destroyer, basically. So I do think they might get a slight boost from that, but I don't think they will be the #1 team. Like, I actually think at some point they're also going to have to make this hard choice. Now, I'll add in, the hard choice might not even be, do we cut someone? It might be, do we sell a player? Do we sell all the players? There's all sorts of things that could be going on because of the external aspects, which obviously have nothing to do with the players in the game.
Yeah, there's definitely something weird going on at Astralis right now, and kind of the evolution of Astralis is just a very strange story. I think when people look at it from start to finish, I think people are gonna be, what the fuck was going on over there? Because it went from being dated after they were essentially neglected by another big esports organization. It was done with you know, everyone had an ownership stake in the company. Indeed, when they got an investor to come in, that was the big talking point. It was a player-owned organization. Pundits like me and you said, is this proof of concept that the model could work? And then when you looked at the numbers and you looked at what had been agreed to, yeah, it turns out actually it's just a very low percent share of equity in the result of the organization selling, which, by the way, that equity absolutely worth nothing if the organization sells for a small amount or doesn't pay off its debts or anything like that. So yeah, very, very strange. And then obviously now they've gone to being this organization that's ruled over by this Nicola Nyholm guy, broke away from Refresh, their parent company. Now they're their own company. They own multiple other entities under the Astralis name, registered in Denmark, production companies, things like this, all registered to the same address. We don't know what that means. We don't know what the plan is for that. But yeah, very, very strange. And as you said, I mean, they floated on the stock market. They announced $5 million in losses in their first year. They're bringing in the sixth man.
Just as a quick aside, for people who don't understand, if you think it was a good thing that they did the ICO, you don't understand the business of esports as far as my understanding goes. They did that because they needed the money. That was a way to get money in the door now.
Yeah.
That wasn't because it was a brilliant way for them to make more money from something that already exists. No, it was a way to get money in now as opposed to just the standard investment model. Like, that was actually kind of ominous when you look back now.
Yeah, absolutely, when you consider everything. And people say this stuff doesn't affect players, but they get a wind of it. And even though these players have made a lot of money and probably will be some of the few CSGO players that should be financially secure moving forward for a large part of their adult lives, the reality is that when you can sort of sense that something's going on around you, and you might not be secure, and there might be problems and speed bumps, it definitely affects your ability to concentrate on what you need to deliver, and that's results on the server. And we've seen this multiple times. It's no coincidence that NIP had drop-offs at periods where they were withholding money from the players and stuff. I mean, that's like the key motivational factor. At least you get your salary at the end of the day. At least you get your prize money at the end of the day. When that doesn't happen, what are you even playing for at that point? Yeah, it looks great to win tournaments, but yeah, you know, you need your money as well. You got to get your paper. So I am a little bit worried about Astralis and where they go from here. But I mean, undoubtedly, they're not going to drop out the top 10. You know, let's be real. No. I mean, even a bad Astralis is good enough to beat the likes of a FaZe, the likes of an OG. You know, keep going down that list, the top 10 teams.
And some of the pieces still are very, very good. Like, if they had the budget to do it and the wherewithal, if they could pivot now and pick any Danish players they want and, like, you know, rebuild the team, it could be the #1 team again tomorrow. The core pieces to me are still very valuable.
Yeah, well, definitely, and you know, what I'm super intrigued about is when Astralis eventually does go the way of the fucking dodo, because it has to happen at some point, if not 2020, surely the year after. I mean, interested end up and what happens, and who wants to still play with each other, and which parts of the core stay together. What young guns are going to come through, and be part of that, because it surely won't be Esatag. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But I think as good as this team is, they're still a solid top 5 team, and will be for some time to come. I don't believe in them as a world number 1, and I think by the time we get to the major in November, assuming it goes ahead, I think yeah, they're going to be in a bad spot, and I certainly wouldn't be backing them to win that. In fact, the further away the major was, the worse it was always going to be for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed.
Right. So the other talking points, obviously, let's talk a little bit about Mousesports. They were the beneficiaries, able to overcome Astralis in that 2-1 series. Made it all the way to the finals, where they lost 3-2, because it's a best of 5 in the ESL Pro League, to Fnatic. And a bit of a mixed bag, really, in the final. But overall, a great performance. I think finishing run in this, when you're Mousesports, certainly no shame in that. Might be a little bit surprising that it's Fnatic you actually eventually end up losing to, when you look at some of the games they won, some of the series they won, plus the turning around against Astralis over the course of the season. But it was telegraphed. They'd already lost to Fnatic earlier in the proceedings, in the playoffs. They had certainly good results up to that point. You know, again, they beat FaZe. They beat Na'Vi comfortably 2-0. They beat G2 way back when. Any team that sort of came up against them, with the exception of the finalists in Fnatic, they were able to overcome at some point in the league. So it was a very good run, just not enough on the day, and there was a couple of poor performances from Mousesports. I think what was telling about this Mousesports team was the reaction. They were very upset at not winning the final overall. And usually teams that are expected to finish second, you know, they act like they've won the fucking tournament. There's teams out there that act like they've won the tournament when they finish like top 3 and get some money. They're happy with that. Mousesports definitely were not happy with this. Were very disappointed in themselves. Made that very clear publicly. Chris J just tweeted out, "Fuck this shit." I mean, he was pretty pissed off. Like, so I gotta say, I
love the Dutch, mate. They're just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, they don't give a fuck. I gotta say, like the series, it looked very good for them at one point. Fnatic took the first map. They took overpass 16-11. Mousesports bounced back, won on Dust 2, as you might expect. They were able to beat Fnatic on their pick, Vertigo. So at that point, you've now got 2 chances to close out the series, and you're going into your map pick of Nuke. Should have been cut and dry. I felt really good about my prediction. Fnatic 16-1 them on Nuke. And this is another thing that started happening to Mousesports lately. For all the praise you want to give them, these capitulations where they just let matches go, seemingly, I don't think it's a great look. I don't know if it's something they do, like when they have a bad half and they just think conserve energy or something. I can't believe a team as good as Mousesports would lose 16-1 twice in the semis and then the final of a tournament. Seems sort of crazy, but it's something that happened. And then on Mirage, which is a bit of a coin toss of a map anyway for the decider, they ended up losing. But overall, I thought they were really good. I still really like this team. I still think they've got all the parts to keep winning tournaments in 2020. Frozen continues to develop. Woxic is a bombastic player. Rops is back to his best. He was absolutely outrageous in this series. So yeah, sure, you finish second, but you just ran up against a better team at the end of the day, and that can't happen at every tournament.
Yeah, but that's also what I feel like is hard, and it's probably what's frustrating the Mousesports players, is that this is their window to win. Like every single tournament since about, I don't know, like late October last year, they've either won or been right in position to win, like in the final, like lose to the eventual champion. Like this is a team that can win all of these competitions. So every time you lose a close one like this, or the Epicenter one, or you don't go as deep as you'd hoped in kind of 8-say, it's going to be frustrating, because you've got to know, especially for your veterans like Chris J and Carrigan, the window doesn't last forever. And that major, by the way, is probably outside of that window. Like that window doesn't last usually over a year. Like in fact, you're lucky to get a year. So it must be frustrating because these are the tournaments you've got to win if you want to become like the #1 team. If you want to be, and so my problem is, I still think they're very good. I still think it's like the general consistency of the team and how they match up against all the other teams looks great. They should be a solid top 3, top 4 team, but I feel as though they probably have missed the chance to be the clear #1. And the teams that are coming are going to upgrade, going to get better. Some of the other teams are going to drop off. I also think this is another team. This is why I made a tweet along these lines. Of all the teams in the top 10, I think Mousesports is going to be one of the hardest hit by the Krieg nerf. Because think about it, right? When you imagine Mousesports on the T side, dude, everyone except Woxic used the SG at times. Like, I know Rob's made that tweet where he said he's been an AK player for months now, like mainly. That's after utterly abusing the SG for months and months at the end of last year. Like, just go look. Someone did a stats count on Reddit where they put like all the amount of kills that players had with the Krieg over the last, I don't know, like 3 or 6 months. He was like a top 10 player. And then you look throughout their team, it helped Carrigan when he would entry. Frozen pretty much mains the fucking weapon. Chris J uses it where necessary. So it's not that they're going to be bad, but I do think they were getting slightly inflated fragging by having that weapon. And then I'll add in as well, the one player who isn't a Krieg player, Woxic, probably had his worst tournament in this ESL Pro League. His numbers were way down. And the thing with him is, it wasn't even that he had to have like the big numbers in those same way Rops does. He's supposed to be the impact player, though. He's the guy who wins you like a crazy 1v2. He's the player where when you got a Dust 2 game, you must win. He will drop 20 kills on the T side and you just won the game immediately. So my big problem with him is, if he's going to have quiet games, Mousesports shouldn't win a tournament like this. Like, actually, it's not crazy. If you tell me Crims went mental over 5 maps and Roland's one of the best players, they could lose to these teams. That was always my problem with Mousesports. It was a brilliant feel-good story, especially the whole Carrigan element and battling all his old teams and beating FaZe and Astralis, the guys who kicked him out. That's a brilliant narrative for a movie. But the problem I've always had with Mouse is, to get them to the top, to #1, #2, and winning championships, it felt like it took almost everything the team had. And they maxed the team out. And mad props for figuring out how to do that. But I don't really know that they've got another gear they can go into. I feel like they hit that peak and they're going to waver between that, but I don't think they can be much better than they are now with this lineup.
So this is where I differ. I actually think the Krieg is something that could actually help Mousesports, the Krieg nerfs. I mean, I'm just going to talk about the Krieg nerfs specifically after we talk about the NA ESL Pro League. But for me, I actually think that Frozen and Rops have it in their locker to use the AK very well. Whereas a lot of players that right now, the Krieg was like, it was like a special delivery from God for their careers. They couldn't rifle properly anymore with real rifles. And they were given a rifle that not only was incredibly forgiving in most duels, was also giving you the capability to beat AWPers at distance, which we all know the AK can do, but there's no room for error. There was always a room for error with the Krieg. Now, Woxic probably, in my opinion, had one of his weaker tournaments here because the Krieg online especially is a fucking tearaway. And if you're an AWPer and people have a $3,000 rifle that can essentially challenge you from any point on the map and challenge, it's very hard as an AWPer to have those like high impact games because even if you beat them in one round, it's $3,000. Guess what? It's coming back next round. You will never get away from that fucking gun. It's why for me these nerfs are not only just perfect. I love the fact the gun's been annihilated. A lot of people were saying they've gone too far. Can't go far enough with that gun compared to where it was for me. It was definitely ruining my enjoyment of Counter-Strike. And Lord knows what it must be like to be a player and see some dog shit cunt that you would style on with a fucking AK, like just banging your head off from across the map because of some broken gun that you stubbornly refuse to adapt to, like some pros did. But yeah, I mean, I actually think Mousesports could be one of the teams that come out on top because not so much because their skill's going to increase because of the nerfs, but because there are teams that are above them right now that were abusing the Krieg, like Fnatic, for example, who we'll talk about in this final. I think G2 was another team that's going to drop off very badly. I think we have to start questioning a little bit about why some of these teams have had a climb at this particular time period. And I think this is going to be the great equalizer for the top 10. I think we're going to see, good teams with good individual level players climb, and we're going to see those pretenders like drop the fuck out. Like, and I don't think but put it this way, worst case scenario, Mousesports are going to stay where they are, I think. But, you know, who knows? We can talk about Fnatic as well in the final. Obviously, good little segue there because Brawler gets a lot of mockery for his use of the Krieg. I think that's a little bit harsh. But I will say, I mean, in this series, it's good use. Had a fantastic performance overall. He was crowned MVP. I was just very surprised at Fnatic throughout this tournament. I didn't know that they were going to sort of be able to find this level of consistency. I certainly had them making the playoffs in my mind. I think their form's been too good. They're up to 3rd in the world rankings for people who haven't had a look at that yet. But they were just on another level at times, even compared to Mousesports. And if you go and look at the results over the course of this tournament, some of their results are unreal. Like they, you know, the teams they were getting 2-0s against, you know, they beat Astralis, which has always been like a bit of a weird stumbling block for them in the past. They did it comfortably. They beat FaZe. You know, every team they were coming up against, they were able to win. They managed to hold it out to the finals, and it was just so many good things to like about this team and the way they played. First of all, Crims. He is like, he's got a fucking painting of him in a fucking basement.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Like his ability, like when you talk about pros that have been around for a long period of time and have dropped off, you know, remember Crims was in that 2015 team that we're talking about Olof being a distant memory of. Crims continued performances year upon year. That's going to put him in the top players for year upon year. The madness is the guy's only 25. And people probably forget that because he's been around for so long and been at such a high level. But again, he is actually in another uptick, another upward trajectory. And why is that? Because he's finally got a team around him. We've seen the frustrated Crims in the past where he'll drop 50 in a series across 2 maps and still lose. We've seen that. But now Flusher's back. I mean, like, we've got to give credit to Flusher. When he was brought back in, it looked a bit desperate. He's been great. He will single-handedly clutch you 5-6 rounds, every playing really, really well. Brolin, we always said so much potential. Now he's starting to realize it. And low-key, the player that probably isn't getting as much credit because he's had so many false dawns down the years is JW. Actually back to being an impactful AWPer, very solid, good all-round player. And then, hell, there's even been some maps over the course of ESL Pro League where fucking Golden had a go at top. So go fucking figure. Fnatic are just so well balanced right now, and they've got so much talent, and they're just in a groove that this is not an artificial position for them to be 3rd. This isn't a false dawn that they've won this tournament and are crowned the best team in Europe. I honestly have said for a while I expected them to keep winning tournaments in 2020. It doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon. They're a great fucking team right now.
Yeah, one thing I really like about this team is the consistency that they have. Like, I don't know much about him as a person, that Samuelson guy who's the coach, but I'm going to speculate he must have done a good job because one of the things I like about this team is they play to their own strengths so well. Like, you can tell they absolutely understand what all the players are meant to do in their team and how it fits together because as a result, they don't have to have the best fragging power of everyone in the whole server to win the match. And the amount of times that they're in matches, it's outrageous. Like you can almost it's very rare. I know people are going to think of like the Katowice final or whatever. Like it's so rare ever that this team gets smashed. It's so hard to smash Fnatic, even because the wily veterans.
Even if you buy them a few drinks first.
Not bad. It's like what they also have that same quality with their veterans that actually I'm seeing from the MIBR guys in Flashpoint, which is once they're down in a game, they don't just go, well, the correct thing to do would just be to play proper Counter-Strike and just lose to you in a great game and I'll tip my hat to you, sir. They go, fuck it, right? Throw everything at them. Do some crazy shit. Do a ridiculous push somewhere that's outrageous. That ends the game if you get caught, but wins you the game if you can make it happen. That's one thing I love about them. They've got the mixture of, they've got young Brolan, but he's flanked by all these like legendary people who've been in every situation of the game and aren't afraid to use that experience as their main weapon. Like JW and Flusher aren't star players. They're somewhat washed in that regard. But they're good enough. They haven't dropped below the threshold of skill and ability where it would then inhibit all that experience. They can still use that experience against you. So the mix they have in the team's brilliant. It seems to be a well-coached team. I have to figure they themselves think they can be number one in such a chaotic scenario that we exist in right now. So Actually, it's a really interesting landscape at the moment, because if Na'Vi ends up not being a clear-cut number one, we could have one of those real awesome periods where you have like 4 teams that could all win the tournament. And then it's just on who plays well today, who adapts, who has an interesting game plan for the others. I love that kind of Counter-Strike.
Yeah, totally. I think it's reminiscent to the period we found ourselves in for a time in 2016. I think we talked a little bit about this as well back in 2018. You know, it's nice when you get those periods where there just isn't a clean cut dominant force where people and there is, like, you know, new rosters and people are, you know, it's all up in the air. Now, unfortunately, as you said, it's a chaotic you know, global situation that's led to this, where we don't even know what event we're going to have next week. We don't even know what event we're going to have, you know, in a month, or there's nothing really sort of planned out. There's no steady path through, if you're a top tier team, to even know what kind of event you have the potential to win, or what you're kind of working towards, or what you're training for. But that being said, we know that LANs are going to come back. We know that tournaments are going to come back. And we have got a lot of online CS in the meantime, with all of these teams playing. That is going to keep people in a good spot in terms of staying match sharp. So certainly, if you climb to number one during this period, there might be a big asterisk next to it. It might be a little bit invalid. But certainly, I agree with you. I think there's like not even just 4 teams, really, because as we'll segue into talking about what happened in America, I still think, you know, Liquid can be in among that mix and maybe take advantage. Maybe EG are going to fix some of their problems. Maybe they're going to make a roster change. We've got a lot of good teams in the top 10 that aren't playing at full capability yet, and it's just whoever's going to find that momentum first. And Fnatic, for me, absolutely could be a future number one team, especially if Na'Vi continue to drop the ball the way they have. So yeah, let's talk about the NA. ESL Pro League, obviously that one a little less interesting in terms of overall quality of the teams. The Brazilian teams that were in it, 4th and 3rd, MIBR finished 4th. Furia did finish above them. I don't know if you want to talk too much about that as a topic, because obviously I know MIBR are in Flashpoint as well, where they're undefeated. I do have to I think MIBR, you know, their performance in Flashpoint really flatters to see. I would be worried if they weren't beating some of the caliber of opposition.
They've also barely been winning some of these games as well, mate. Like, they've been really flexing the fact that they are the people who've been there, and some of these teams have never been in that spot before. That's a big edge for them in that one league that isn't the case in ESL Pro League. The
one thing I will say, obviously, I've been streaming the Flashpoint games, and I did watch MIBR against Mad Lions, which
brilliant series
was the first real test. I thought Mad Lions were going to win. I really like that lineup. I like some of the players on that lineup. I think they're immensely talented. But the deciding factor, essentially, in that was Fallen had a monster series. And what's been happening low-key is in Flashpoint, Fallen's been fucking out of this world. He's looked like 2016 Fallen again. But I've always took it with the caveat, yeah, but you're beating fucking Bad News Bears or, you know, Chaos or, you know, whoever it is. So you against tier 2 opposition, I'd be worried if a player like Fallen didn't look good. But Mad Lions, I consider them tier 1 opposition, and Fallen absolutely tore them a new asshole. It was indecent how good he performed. Multiple clutches, incredible shots. He was back to looking like some semblance of the player he used to be. Now, I still think that the lineup has untold problems. I still think we're again going to get into Counter-Strike royalty discussion about this. I still think MIBR need to change things, but I'm kind of like them in the sense I don't know what the change should be. But MIBR finishing 4th overall in the ESL Pro League North American season, having Furia finish above them and finish above them by beating them 2-0 in a series, it really points to just how far MIBR have declined overall as a quality team. And I think on the roster, a lot of things haven't worked. I think Taco is playing terribly right now. I think Mayan looks like a really good player, but for some reason, he isn't having the impact you would expect him to have. He looks really, really good. I can tell he's stressed out based on, you know, him having a bit of a cry about that thing on ESL where they said, like, oh, we missed Cold Zero. Yeah. if you're getting upset over memes, I don't think you're in a good place mentally. You know, for example, let's contrast that with JW. Been shit on for 5 years, called a pig, called a fucking subhuman, like you name it, called a cheater. Like, he's had to deal with all sorts of shit. He just fucking tweets a little pig every time he wins a game. Suck my dick, I'm JW, you ain't. That's how you handle it, right? But you know, if you're crying over a league that you are in, making a meme about a player that used to play for your team, like I think you're a basket case. I don't think you got
the best player of all of your entire history as well. I know.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Maybe this team losing misses the greatest player to ever play for them. How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Why is people so ridiculous?
I know, it's mad, isn't it? And you know, let's also be real. Like the KNG situation, KNG's career will be a career pointed with tragedy, but tragedy that he is ultimately responsible for. I feel that him joining MIBR, he's had some good series since he joined MIBR. Never really against top tier opposition. Again, only seems to perform against the weaker teams when where his aggressive style doesn't get punished as much. But honestly, I kind of feel like he's missed his entire window to have like the glowing career he could have, and it's predicated on one moment of losing his temper. He could have joined MIBR before the decline, and he misses that window because of him being an asshole.
It basically took 2 years out of his potential prime. 2 years.
Yeah, and he's 27 now. He's getting on in years, and he's in a struggling team. And trust me, we all know how it works. When you're the new guy in MIBR in a fallen team, it's dead man's shoes. It really is. Like, he'll make brutal cuts, but he's looking at the new guys first. You know, last one in, first one out is typically how it works. So, yeah, I don't know, man. MIBR have a lot of fucking problems right now, and I almost think Flashpoint is... It's like, you know, the reality is when they go back into real-world Counter-Strike, it's going to be a nightmare for them. I almost think them doing so well in Flashpoint is harming them because it gives them the delusion that everything's okay.
Oh, it's definitely like a false panacea that they think, oh, everything's fixed now. Look, we're doing awesome. We'll win all these clutch games. We're looking great doing it. It's like, yeah, but look at the opposition. Like at the moment, the sad thing is, if you look at the opposition just on paper, Mad Lions is better than MIBR. They've got a better team. They've got better talent. They've got way better system. But what they don't have is that experience. And so while they're still waiting to gain that experience, which by the way they're doing by playing these matches, MIBR still has a slight edge there, and they've been able to use that. But I'd agree. The problem is that's more on Mad Lions. If Mad Lions was at that level, well, then MIBR wouldn't. They would have just lost some of these games in close fashion. And everyone would go, well, good try, but, you know, this is the future and you're the past. Move on. So I actually think them winning Flashpoint 1 would probably be the worst thing that could happen to this MIBR lineup, because it would make them believe that things are getting better and that they're going to be cool and great. All I'll say is this. Not a single one of these types of great matches happened when it was offline. I never saw even flashes of it. None of them looked as good as this. It was basically like Fur would carry and that was it. Everyone else looked fairly bad generally. I'm also with you on the Mayan point. If you go and look statistically, he's one of the worst players in the entire like tournament of Flashpoint. And yet every time he has a highlight round, his aim looks fucking sick. He's like straight one bullet in the maul in the head. So that tells me he's not being used.
He is much better. He's one of those examples that we talked about earlier where the statistics don't align to what you know he can do. And unfortunately, I think as you'd expect, first of all, he's Argentinian in a Brazilian team. I don't know how much impact that has. There's obviously a language issue there, which apparently is fine because he speaks Portuguese. But there's a cultural issue there, and just being a young player coming into a roster like that, you're playing with legends, you know, and the team is doing shit. And I think clearly he's feeling the pressure, honestly. I mean, you would,
and this has never been a team, like you said earlier, like this has never been a team that was kind to the rookies. So as a result, in other teams, let me think what would be a good example of this. Oh, well, how about Brokey and FaZe? Actually, they said when FaZe did really well at that Blast Premier group, that one of the reasons why was they'd sort of like, I think something like they'd given Brokey more positions he wanted or something like that. Right? Yeah. The idea of MIBR doing that would be a fucking alien concept. Their premise is almost like, right, you were a little bit nervous, a little bit intimidated at the players level. We'll give you the bitch roles then, right? We'll just do all the good stuff. So until you have it's almost like, I almost feel like in a fallen team, it's like some Kung Fu master shit. Until you're willing to literally come and say, give me that stuff, they're not going to. That's the test almost. So if you're willing to just get pushed on the outside and be the guy who takes the blame all game long, well, we need one of those as well until we're winning. So you can do that role.
Yep.
Bolts did a great job.
Everyone needs a lightning rod.
You know, we let Phelps do it for a few years. You can be the guy taking all the heat now. And that way, if we even lose the game, well, I had a great performance. Fur was killing it. KNG looks all right online. What were you doing, homie? In that scenario, that's why it's the worst spot to be in. MIBR 5th is the new NIP 5th. It's like you just take all the blame, even if you're literally, by the way, the irony of it is sometimes because you've been pushed into something you don't want to do, you're not even the one who's the one winning or losing the games. Like it's the person who has everything the way they want it, but doesn't perform to the world-class level, but who gets, as a result, on paper, will never look like the person who's the problem because statistically, I'm sure they'll always do fine. Like another person I have to pick as well is KNG because he's someone else I thought benefited from the Krieg. When he was online, he could either AWP or he could use a Krieg. Brilliant. Every round he had a weapon he could use. Put that guy in an AK and he'll be way less effective if you ask me. So I also think he's another person who his benefit in Flashpoint was, like you said, people didn't punish him. Like some of the plays he makes, because he's a very aggressive player, I'll say they're like sometimes questionable decisions as to what he does. But when he's against players who are playing a bit more scared and a bit more just simple Counter-Strike, it works. If he was playing against some really good teams and they were just lurking on that part of the map, he'd get chewed up all game long. And I doubt he'd know what was happening and he wouldn't be able to adapt. So listen, brilliant for Fallen. Nice resurgence for his career. Fur still looks very good and was able to do whatever Fur does whenever he wants. The others, they're on shaky ground for me. Like I would go ahead right now and say, I don't think there's any chance in this world that this 5-man MIBR lineup exits 2020 and is still all in MIBR uniforms. I wouldn't be surprised if half the team gets ripped apart. Like I think the org themselves must be aware that this isn't good enough and that the Flashpoint angle, like you say, is basically inflating their stock. They're not the team that they appear to be there because if they play again big tournaments, if they can beat a Mad Lions or a Havu, that's going to be like to get out of a group. It's not going to be to win the motherfucking tournament, is it?
Yeah, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with it, man. I mean, like, you know, at the end of the day, if anybody has a grievance with MIBR, let's say they win Flashpoint and they win like $500,000. If anyone has a grievance with that, well, why didn't you come into the league and stop them, right? I mean,
exactly.
No, any team that points the finger at them for like taking it easy, well, you could have took it easy too, motherfuckers, but you didn't, did you? You went with ESL, so you know you guys made your choice. But I will say, like, I do think if they want to get back to some semblance of shape, like they really need to have a long, hard think about whether the strategy is just to cocoon themselves away.
And remember, they fired their coach. So at the moment, by the way, here's the crazy thing. We had an interview with Dead, the manager, after they won the last game against
Great guy,
Lions.
by the way, like him.
And yeah, he's a cool guy. And they actually asked him straight to his face, like, well, you guys have cut your coach though. So like what's going on there? Are you just not looking for a coach? Are you basically trying to claim you're the coach now? And he essentially said, it's kind of like when they let Zeus go the first time, is the problem is, bear in mind, they're not doing an English language team anymore. So they have to basically get someone who speaks Portuguese. Like, how many options do you have? I mean, at this point in time, no joke. People think I'm memeing. It's not a joke. The only person left is basically Peacemaker. And since at the moment he's coaching a motherfucking Storm at Mad Lions, he might not even be available. That might not even be a movie.
And Hunden spoke in very glowing terms about him, it's got to be said. And he said, even though we fought sometimes, I mean, this has been the recurring thing I've found. Yeah, apparently Peacemaker is fucking Warmaker. That's not a meme. But nobody works as hard as him. Like, he's just one of those guys who he expects everyone to be putting in the same level of effort he does. And when people don't, he gets very upset. And he's learned a little bit, you know?
As much as he's become a meme, I've never heard an IGL who worked with him say he was shit. I've never heard it.
Yeah, and listen, as always, we're probably responsible for that meme in a lot of ways. Because, you know, we do that kind of podcast. We keep it real. We don't think people are above reproach, not even ourselves.
He's done some mad memeable shit as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to fucking point out that the guy can clearly do a good job and clearly is doing a good job at Mad Lions. If Hunden, the IGL who left, is saying, yeah, actually Peacemaker was sick and was a big part of our success, and I really want him to do well over there, and I hope they do well with Asilian, who was my pick to replace me. That's all you need to know. Like, I mean, that is a pretty glowing endorsement. Even Sean Gares, when all was said and done, and they had a very fractious relationship between each other when they were in Misfit. Sean Gares said, listen, it was tough because he was wanting to cut players and I didn't sign off on that. But in terms of what he brought to the team, coaching, prep, ideas, work rate. He was second to none. He's the best coach he's ever worked with. And by the way, if you want to see those interviews, you can go over the CSGO, the YouTube channel, and watch both of them if you haven't already. But yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I mean, Peacemaker wouldn't leave Mad Lions to go to this train wreck right now, right? I mean, what would be the point? And again, remember, this is always Fallen's baby. I mean, this is Fallen's jam. Like, you've got to be totally on side with him. That's why when they do invariably make a roster change, Taco is going nowhere, by the way, despite the poor statistics and poor performances he's been putting up late. Fallen is a guy that for all the tough cuts, now that things have got tough in MIBR, he obviously Fur can't go anywhere, fair enough, but he will not be looking at Taco at all. Like, I think he needs. I
don't imagine so.
Yeah, he needs he needs the old gang around him. I don't think he wants to go out into the unknown.
I even think there's that whole element of why I personally never was one of these people who was like with picket signs outside the fucking North offices every day, like, cut AZ. It's like, if you haven't figured it out yet, MSL obviously just likes to play with AZ. Like, whether you think he's shit or not, it's irrelevant. In MSL's mind, AZ does X, Y, and Z, and that's all that MSL asks of him. So in the same sense, for me, I think Tackle fills that role for Fallen. He's a known quantity. You know exactly how he's going to play, what spots he's going to play, in what way he's going to play. And so as long as you're cool with that, as an IGL, you just think, right, well, there's one thing I've got taken care of. I'll worry about these other two factors that have this player who can't do what I want, or this player who's shit. Like, I think he's one of those players where it's a natural oversight for an IGL. It'll never be your first problem. And so, as you say, you'll stay on that team for years, potentially.
Yeah. Just one other thing as well. I just wanted to bring up the spectre of FNX, right? I want to remind you of what he tweeted in 2016. Right? He said, if MIBR comes back, it will be a joke, in my humble opinion. And they will end the name that was once well represented. Turns out FNX.
Profit.
Yeah, mate. Not bad. Like, when we all talk about aged well,
that's pretty good.
He's nailed that, hasn't he? From start to finish. So good on him. I do miss FNX. Never thought I'd say this. Like, miss that motherfucker. Like, why isn't he out there playing anymore? It seems incredible to me that, this guy he's another guy that just disappeared into obscurity. Like,
I mean, if you can get yourself on the guest list for any of the top 3 hottest nightclubs in Brazil, you can go see him right now, Rich. He's there every week, Yeah.
So what team's he in now?
In the fucking bottle service. He plays for that team called Red Canids with like Knack or something.
Yeah, like who the fuck are they? Like,
I'm pretty sure that's one of those ones where those players are just in it for the name value, and I'm sure in Brazil it's a way to like market them or some bullshit. I don't. It was implied to me that he's someone who's never going to put in the hours to be an actual pro player again.
Yeah, I mean, Red Canids, mate. It sounds like some sort of fucking colloquial name for an STD, doesn't it? My belly's covered in the Red Canids.
Oh, FNX has got Red Canids. Well, he did put it around a bit, didn't he?
It's fucking ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, like I said, but yeah, turns out he was right. MIBR not in a great place right now, despite the Flashpoint results, and certainly the ESL Pro League results will be worrying for them. Right, let's get straight to the final of the ESL NA Pro League. As expected, it's between Team Liquid, it's between Evil Geniuses. Got to be said, this was a little bit different because Liquid, there was a bracket system in place that meant Team Liquid did have a one-map advantage going in to the best of 5, unlike the European system.
I'm guessing they probably let the players decide that's why it was probably different if I had to speculate.
Right, okay.
Because it does seem weird that it's different, right? When the two finals are totally different.
Yeah, I think it was just to do with the number of teams and how the playoff system worked, maybe. Okay. Yeah, I think so. But anyway, so Liquid versus Evil Geniuses in the final. Liquid started with it's best of 5 again. Liquid started with that 1-0 advantage. Now, everything that was going on with EG before this didn't necessarily bode well. We've obviously had the coaching change. I'm a pet going out. It's been confirmed now that Zeus has come in. We'll talk about that in just a second after the final. But obviously, the team has been underperforming. A lot of question marks about Stanislaw's in-game leadership. A lot of question marks about Tarek's performances. A lot of questions about, that core 3 from NRG who were very good friends with I'm a Pet by all accounts. How are they going to adapt to it? Meanwhile, Team Liquid, they've been languishing. They are not the force that they were at the end of 2019. The one that could come out and just blow teams out the water. They've got players who are having poor performances. There's been some question marks about how committed they are right now in the online Counter-Strike landscape. Obviously, Valorant's been out. They've been participating in a few, like a tournament for their org, which again, I don't really have a problem with players playing other games in like downtime and relaxing and stuff. It's not a big deal to me. I think partway through big tournaments, probably should be dialed in a little bit more focused. But then again, who's to say they're not? Who's to say they didn't practice 8 hours and then play that one series? Who fucking knows? I don't know. So I won't criticize them too much for that. But I will say that they overcame some mad problems here to beat EG. The series was put on hold because Nitro was in the middle of a fucking tornado or some shit. Like fucking Wizard of Oz shit going through his neighborhood. And his power went out and he had to go to a neighbor's house who still had power to play the rest of the series. And that delayed the whole fucking thing. So, but he managed to overcome it and they managed to win. So for me, what the fuck does it say about EG that not only were you non-competitive in this series when a team's in-game leader has his game interrupted because his house and power has been wrecked by a fucking tornado and you still can't get competitive in this series. They lost us 16-11 and they lost Vertigo 69. We're never really in the series. And quite tellingly, poor performances from 2 big players, Ethan and Cirque. So I think he didn't look great in this series for me. Meanwhile, Liquid, this was a breeze for them. It was 2 easy.
Yeah, if we're going to criticize MIBR, who's on the brink of winning a fucking $1 million tournament, we've got to mention the same about Team Liquid and EG. These motherfuckers are the biggest benefactor of the fact that ESL Pro League wasn't a LAN tournament. Because as soon as they had to go online and split the regions, these 2 bombs got to instantly just get into a final and win some prize money. I mean, Team Liquid went from the prospect of how are you going to beat Astralis and Mousesports and Fnatic and fucking everyone, Na'Vi, and win the tournament to can you beat evil geniuses? Yes. Right, do it 3 times. We just did. There's all the money. If you think that solves anything, you haven't been following what their problems are because this isn't. There were no teams here who could expose the flaws. EG's in a worse spot than Liquid is. Amazingly, they've actually managed to overtake Liquid's fucking problems with bigger problems of their own. Obviously, just brought in Zeus. Maybe he can help fix some of it. After that, you're just talking about Fury and MIBR. This was a mad weak field if you Team Liquid, because unfortunately, the interesting thing about NA is at the moment they've got loads of talent from say like positions 3 to 8. But positions 1 and 2 are still so far above in terms of like roster, experience level of the lineups that like it is really playing in a tiny little sandbox if you Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses. So yeah. I didn't take too much from this aside from, yeah, EG looks terrible and Team Liquid basically got the easiest possible fucking route to like 100K or whatever they won you could imagine.
So, what do you think overall then about EG's this coaching move with Zeus coming back? Because as we said on the last episode, I was very doubtful. I didn't know if Stan could put his shit aside. Somebody did point out after that episode that on a episode of Pika's Advantage, which is the podcast that Davey and Semphis do, and apologies to Davey. I obviously didn't watch that episode. Sorry, brother. He said that actually he'd be willing to give it another go, and that he would like to go back in time and fucking fix things if he could, and that he was a good worker, and he blah blah blah, he put it all behind him. So I didn't know that, but apparently it's true. It's happened now. I still think, honestly, there's gonna be some friction looming. I just can't see Stan changing his fucking, a leopard can't change his spots or whatever. Like I can't see him suddenly adapting the wisdom and perspective you need to be, oh yeah, I totally welcome this guy's input when you are someone who has famously resisted any additional input for your entire playing career, even to the point where it's cost you high profile jobs in the past. It seems unthinkable to me. But EG needed to do something. I don't think the coaching change is going to fix everything, honestly, but it could be a step in the right direction. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's only a very mild tweak. Like, I don't really see that this fixes everything and puts it all back together. I'm glad for Zeus. I think he deserved to have a job like this. I think it was even the team that made the most sense for both sets of
great coach. His record speaks for itself. I do want to say, by the way, Duncan, just while we're there, I saw a comment on Reddit that I couldn't believe. I know I shouldn't read Reddit. It's bad for me. but there was a comment in Reddit in the thread officially announcing him, saying, "How can this washed-up journeyman still get a job?" And it's like, are you like, do you just go to his Wikipedia page and see that he's actually been really solid and he's been in Augs for like long periods of time, not a journeyman at all, and been successful.
He's one of the most successful coaches in the history of CS:GO,
like,
hands
if
down.
we just go on trophies
top
won,
5 or top 3.
yeah, if we just go on trophies won, he's like, what a fucking, I couldn't believe it, mate. I legitimately couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like, I mean,
this guy's resume cannot be fucked with as a coach. It cannot. He might be the best coaching resume ever.
Yeah, he was in Team Liquid for between 2016 and 2018, and he was in MIBR from 2018 to 2020. And now he's joined EG. You know, and obviously was associated with the Brazilians in various iterations for a prolonged period of time as well, going back to 2015, you know, Luminosity SK Gaming. So absolute insanity to even suggest this guy's a journeyman. But yeah, not only that, his resume is unbelievable. Like, even if he was joining a new team every 6 months and they were winning trophies, that would be a good thing, not an indictment, you mad cunt. I couldn't believe it, mate. But anyway, sorry, do continue to give me your thoughts about whether or not you think this will fix things.
The main issue for me is, like, the two biggest problem points, as like I said in the last episode, seem to be Stanislaw and Tarek, and they are the two players who, as far as I can tell, you can't really cut at the moment, because who do you replace Stanislaw with? I mean, you can do it, but it's just that this is where politics ruins, like, it's why we can't have nice things. Because here's the problem, right? If I take out Stanislaw, then I tell you what, this isn't even a joke. The people that I would have to consider replacing him with, assuming Daps isn't coming back, because that's not exactly looking great for him at fucking Gen G, it would be someone like FNS. So every fan listening now who doesn't watch Counter-Strike, they just read Reddit, would go, fucking idiot, FNS. FNS just took a bunch of fucking rejects and literally almost made like top 4 this fucking Flashpoint tournament, like with no org and no support. So if you're one of those cocksuckers who believes that like Nicola Nyholm and whoever rubs devices back before the games deserve 10% of the credit for all those majors, remember that FNS doesn't even have that. He's literally being paid by the league and just working with a bunch of players, half of whom, by the way, were playing Valorant because they don't even have a contract right now. They're just literally just out in the wilderness. And he still was making them look fucking legit, actually, doing some good stuff. So the problem is, are you going to give him a call up to the big leagues again? It's not a bad move. It's not even that dissimilar to what actually happened to Stanislaw himself. It's just that, again, those are hard moves to sell to people, because actually players can be as bad as fans in that sense. When your stock is going down, every player is out on you. Like, if you knew how many stupid players I know who thought Carrigan was washed after FaZe, or they had a conversation with Nico over a beer and they thought he's garbage and he doesn't know anything about tactics. And I just told them all, mate, I'll see you in about a year and we'll see where your team is. And by the way, spoiler, they're all fucking below him in the rankings and they can suck a dick. So it's like, sadly, everyone rides. We're all ODing on Reddit narratives on a fucking regular basis, sadly. So I think they're in a really tough spot in terms of replacing Stanislaw. And then, like I said, the Tarek move is just one where I don't know how you do it, because he is like the emotional core of the team. He is the leader of the team. He is, as far as I know, the bridge to the org. So you can try and convince him to play better. You could give him a different role in the team. That might be a move. But cutting him outright, I feel like if you do that, again, you're not just going to replace him with a player. You'll need someone who can do the things he was doing. You're going to need someone who's a fucking leader. And there's not that many of them in the NA scene, actually, because at the moment, NA's got loads of young talent. If we want to talk riflers aged 19 to 21, I could show you like 20 that look good in that scene. In terms of like leaders and IGLs, it's all the same names from 5 years ago, guys. There aren't any new ones at the moment.
Yeah, but we talked about that a lot. I mean, I've got a video about it on my YouTube channel where it's like, why the fuck would you want to learn to be an in-game leader when the landscape is this? You as an in-game leader will come up with the tactics and the playbook. You'll have to do all this extra work and additional work. If you want to be a good mechanical player as well, you're going to have to put in all the work a regular player puts in. Match with your practice, with your scrims, and on top of that, you're going to be the one breaking down demos, learning tendencies, learning tactics, coming up with a playbook, coming up with effective communication skills and strategies. You have to do all of that work. Then you go into a team, and then if you're lucky, you get 4 players around you who believe in the system, believe that what you're doing is right, and they want to play for you. And then let's say one of those players is a star player, and it goes one of 2 ways. He either gets poached by someone bigger, you've lost your fucking muse, you've lost the person that executes your vision, your avatar on the server, that does all the things that you can't because he's unencumbered by some elements of what you do. Or the star player gets so big and you put him in a position that he doesn't like one game, one time, and he goes to the owners and he goes, listen, it's him or me. Like, fuck this IGL. I'm sick of it. I don't want to play on this I don't want to play this site. And I've told him that, and he keeps putting me there, and it's making my stats bad, and people are memeing on me on Twitter. So you get kicked. This is the reality. So, like, kids are watching this now. Like, who would you rather be? Do you want to be simple or do you want to be Glaive? No one says Glaive. And why wouldn't you say Glaive? Glaive's one of the most successful IGLs of all fucking time. You know, think about all the credit and plaudits he's going to get when he retires. But in the here and now, no kids want to grow up to be that. Because why would you? It's a fucking headache. It's just you know, a pain in the nuts for no good fucking reason. And yeah, we're really losing. The IGL gap is insane. This is why there are players who, honestly, they're not fit to play top-tier Counter-Strike mechanically, but because they've either at some point in their career segued to being an IGL or have always been an IGL and therefore have that stock, they can keep going and people will tolerate poor performances. I don't know what the fix to that problem is long-term, honestly, because I don't see the landscape changing anytime soon. Star players rule the roost.
Yeah, and as well, we have no equivalent to FPL to find the new IGLs. You can find the young talents. We can keep replacing them all day long. But as a result, it's like people literally have to just accept, like, right, one position on the team is really good at tactics and he's going to be minus fucking 10 every game. And we have to find those 10 kills among the other 4 of us. And that shouldn't be, you would hope, a tenable position, but it's just the nature of the world. I think the only reason it works for everyone right now is because everyone has that player. If we ever got to a world, I mean, you've seen it at times when Glaive's had those runs of form where he looks amazing. If you ever have the period where the IGL frags well, Boomich was obviously doing it in an RV, you see those teams become unbeatable. You can't then fuck with them because they already had a great team and a great superstar, nice tactics, and all the roles were fit. And then their IGL frags out. How can you contain that? That would be like if you were playing any other spot. That would be like if someone had a left back that just scored 15 goals a season. Yeah, it's going to be hard to fucking beat that team.
Yeah. I mean, and just think about it as well, though. Like, it's like you say, how do you bring new IGLs through? Like, what's the system for that? Because it's something you really have to jump into. And then the other problem you've got is, forget the star player syndrome. The average player thinks they know better than you, especially if you've got no stock, especially if you've never been an IGL before.
By
Do you
the
know
way,
how hard it is
the
to
best
convince a
example-
pro that you know better about than them?
The best
on anything?
example for me of this entire thing is the Golden to Fnatic move. It's all well and good them now either retconning it, that they never disliked him, or like saying that they made a mistake now. Like, let's be absolutely real. Those guys didn't think they made a mistake at the time.
No.
It's only when their team got bad, they then decided, shit, well, what can we do now? And actually, they had very limited choices. They basically only had
let's
choices
also be
like
real.
Golden.
He was brought back as a desperation move. I don't think they had any fucking belief
no way
that it was going to be as good as.
And yet, look how it's turned out. And remember, so what I'm pointing out essentially is these players wouldn't have chosen to have him in this team and gotten these results. They got lucky in a sense that there was a desperate lack of people who could even play that role, and they just gave this guy a second shot. But if you look at it now, you think to yourself, maybe give him a bit longer than whatever it was, like 6 months or something. I mean, it's not even like in that period he wasn't having results. He had a whole gang of top 4s and won tournaments. Like, that's the point. They gave up on this guy so quickly, and what did they do it for? Exist. There's the ultimate example of how name value becomes like a magical spell. That means that you can do anything you want in the server. The name, it just, every time you think of it, the associations are too powerful. I mean, where the fuck's Exist right now? Have a look at Exist in Dignitas right now. I bet you forgot he was even in Dignitas, didn't you? You thought it was just Get Right in Forest. Like, this guy's career is nothing. And everyone even used to say, Rich is so mad. They used to literally quote his number of trophies. In 2020, they'd go, he's won 24 trophies. It's like, how many of them were recently, you dumb fuck? What, 2 in the last 4 years? Like, how's that relevant?
He won
That's
22
like,
of them in 2014, didn't he? You know,
that would be literally like, it's like that joke of when people say, like, fucking, you know, that stupid joke comedians would have. They would go, I think I could have beat Muhammad Ali. And they'd go, the fuck, no way. And go, no, I mean, right now. It's like, that's almost what you're doing, except you're doing the opposite. You're going, yeah, well, we were talking about, he beat the fuck out of you. He's got 3 world championships. It's like, yeah, well, he's dead now, but even this was when he was alive 5 years ago. He's obviously wrecked, isn't he?
It's all right. We have to use references of even dead people because we can't go forward in time. Stephen Hawking, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jackson, all the greats, all the great references. But yeah, it's just absurd, and I think like one of the things that I'm sort of hoping actually is like where Flashpoint's positioned right now is, you know, maybe you'll see some lineups in there where, yeah, actually there is like a little bit of encouragement for, you know, some unknown teams to maybe have like some unknown IGLs and people might come through and learn a trade. Because if you go through the just recent history and you look at like, you look at not even the successful IGLs are given any leeway by star players. Karrigan's the famous example in FaZe. MSL reinvents himself as an AWPer, goes to DreamHack with North, gets MVP, they win the tournament, gets kicked. And then they're dog shit. And then they have to bring him back. LXCB, ENCE, number 2 in the world, a fucking Finnish team. It's number 2 in the world. They fucking get to the final of a fucking major. Yeah, you're a shit cunt, mate, actually. Yeah, we fucking, you know, what does it take? What does it take to be respected as an IGL by your fucking teammates? Well, it turns out no one's interested in that life. No one's interested in being the good soldier. That's why I'm always inclined to give people that, you know, maybe they don't play well, but at least they execute their IGL's vision. I'll give those guys a pass to a certain degree because at least they're not absolute cunts that are just sharpening the knives like first time they get asked to do something that the IGL thinks can work, but they don't like. And remember as well, it can happen to anybody. Famously, what people forget, when Karrigan was in the old lineup that eventually was at TSM, it got to a stage where players refused to let him pick the maps he wanted in a veto. There were certain players on the team who would say,
one of the best IGLs of all time, specifically in the veto as well, by the way.
Yeah, I am not playing that map, they would say to him.
That would be like saying to Glaive, listen, you can stay in the team in that, but don't be holding any of those tactics or anything. It's like, that's what I do, motherfucker.
It's ridiculous. And, you know, I don't know how public knowledge that is, but yeah, it's crazy. Fuck being an IGL. It is not worth the headache. So, you know, show some love and respect to your IGLs today. Let's talk about the nerfs. Obviously, the ESL Pro League, it was all played out on the old patch. Flashpoint, using the new shit. I got to watch some games with, just as it should be in Counter-Strike.
Wasn't that a breath of fresh air, Rich?
Mate, listen, I'll be honest. There is maybe like a competitive integrity concern there, but I understand that all the players on all the remaining teams wanted to move to the new patch in Flashpoint. That's correct, right? You took a vote.
I would personally, put it this way, to do both. I would personally have done what ESL did if it was my particular choice. Like, I just like the idea that the whole tournament's one thing and that whoever played in the first match played the last match on the same. But if the players themselves voted for it, and if you haven't noticed for the last 3 years, guys, the players are the fucking Pied Piper and we're just the rats behind them. Like, we just have to do whatever the players say, because if not, they go, haha, now I destroy your business and credibility on Twitter. So everyone's just at their mercy at this point in time. Why do you blame the rest of us for taking cues from them? So the players decided it, and as long as they're all happy, it's fine enough. I agree, it was weird because the Krieg just basically didn't exist anymore. I think Fallen bought it once, used it like 2 rounds and then stopped. So you almost never saw Kriegs, but it was like, holy shit. It's like, here's the thing, because I just like world-class Counter-Strike, I could accept the org to some degree and think, now let's see where this goes. Krieg, okay, I did think it was overwhelming, but even so, I thought, well, there's maybe room for it in the game. Mate, this just makes me realize how much better could the last 2 years have been without that shit.
I know.
The matches themselves would even have been better.
Yeah, but like just even like I say, like just having the room as an AWPer to like, you know, maybe miss a shot and get a quick repeat and not just be fucking sprayed down from across the map with a fucking scoped gun. Like, that was just ridiculous. Just tease having to think a little bit more about their economy. You know, you can't just lose a round and then get a bomb plant in a pistol and then buy the most OP gun in the game on the second round and basically take over the whole half.
It's at least more of a gamble now, yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's not just about the Krieg. The Krieg nerf is the biggest part of it. There was a few other components to the balance patch that came out that I think are worth discussing. So first of all, we saw the silenced M4. That was reduced by $200, so it's now $2,900. And I am one of those guys that was still using the silenced M4 anyway. Like,
I still think it's a fun gun.
Yeah, well, listen, I think in some positions you can't justify it. You need the extra bullets, frankly. But it's always been my preference for just wazdering around in matchmaking. But
it's just a satisfying gun to use, mate. Even the sound of it's fucking sick, innit, when you spray it.
Yeah. The reality is the extra flashbang that you can buy by the reduction of that $200 or whatever it is that they've taken it down by, it makes a big difference. And I think that's a gun that's going to become more viable and shift into the meta right now. There was a lot of people complaining about the jumping deagle that came in because they're trying to fix a problem I don't think they needed to try and fix. They basically said that when you drop down for about a second and a half, the aim doesn't correct on the deagle, because then it would make it, I think that would make it overpowered. I think there should be a delay when you jump down. But the reality is they fixed it now to such a degree that, yeah, it's accurate when you land almost instantaneously, but that has led to when you jump, the jumping accuracy is increased. Now, I don't know if they're two separate values and they increased them both. I don't know why they would, but that's certainly how it operates. And there was a lot of videos on Reddit and Twitter, like, look what you can do. You can hide behind that box of Mirage, for example, and pop up and ding people in the head. You can do the Kaylee shot with a deagle, like, quite regularly now as a result of it. But what was interesting was, despite all the people that were complaining about it, it didn't happen in any of the pro games.
I can't remember anyone doing a really crazy deagle.
No,
I'll even say some of those videos, like I saw one video where like a guy was doing it every single time he jumped in an aimbot server. Like, from talking to some of the other analysts, I think that was literally cheats, or he was using an old video that was like not real. Like, there's no way that, like, what he was claiming doesn't happen in the game. They can't do it like that, because the idea that some of the best deagle players wouldn't just do that instantly if it worked. Yeah, I feel like they've over-egged the pudding on that one a bit.
Yeah, because I was expecting it. I sat down for the games in the morning. You know, I was there with all the boys, Vince, Dust, Seaside, you know, Davey. We're all in there. We're all geared up to see the new patch, see what it looks like. And I've said, like, I've prefaced it, watch out for jumping deagles, because every second, based on what I've seen on fucking social media, the deagle should be OP as fuck. Didn't see one. Didn't see one jumping deagle. I saw some deagle rounds, but I didn't see one jumping deagle in the positions where you think it would be unbelievably advantageous. You know, on Mirage especially, you've got ticket booth, you've got near the van, you know, stopping them getting out of apartments. That was, no, not a single jumping dig at any point where you would expect to see it, or where you would expect to see a pro player utilize it. So I don't know what the difference is between what people were doing on social media compared to what people were doing in game. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things. They do say sometimes pros are very slow to assimilate, but in the same way that we saw the Tech 9 came back. I mean, that's another gun.
Yeah, people were using those in the games.
People were using the Tech 9. I mean, typically a round would look like, you know, maybe you get some CZs and some Tech 9s in there, depending on the situation, or a couple of Tech 9s and people held Glocks. I think overall, because I don't want to dwell too much on it, because I think talking about game balance can be pretty boring and pretty dry. It's just a huge step in the right direction for Counter-Strike. Even if the deagle does turn out to be some broken and busted thing, they can just hotfix it. It's not a big deal. But I've seen no evidence in any of the games that I've watched, and that's a few. I haven't seen one player abuse it to the degree that people were telling me it was abusable. So I don't know if it is a big deal. But what I do know is the fucking Krieg is over. That now gives room for better players to fucking come back into the limelight. You know, there were some players famously that weren't even adapting to the Krieg, and like, for example, Bentet in Gen G is one of them. You know, he would still pick up AKs, and obviously that's going to affect his stat line because the Krieg is the superior weapon across the board. And I think now teams that are comprised of people with better, crisper aim and have good AWPers that aren't going to get instantly punished if they have the temerity to miss one shot, I think those teams are now going to come into the ascendancy. Are there any teams in particular you think that have held down by the Krieg in its current state, and now that we've got rid of it, are likely to like spring up and climb the rankings? Because I know you said you think Mousesports might suffer a little bit.
Yeah, let me think. Who would actually benefit from it? I mean, an obvious answer would be, I think FaZe Clan would slightly benefit because not only did they have Nika who didn't use it, but like Rain famously has a god tier fucking AK when he wants to. Like even players like Olof have obviously spent the whole career playing with a fucking AK. Who else is in the top 10 who might be an interesting team? Let me think. Trying to think of someone who would be tactical who might benefit from it. Because the thing is, for example, I don't actually think Team Liquid will suffer much because, like, the only one I really associate with the Krieg that much was actually Naf. Elige obviously used it because he has some of the best spray ever.
But Elige was using it before it was this out of control nightmare. So, yeah.
I mean, he can very much absolutely use an M4 and an AK. I don't think that affects him very much. I actually think some of the teams, like a Mad Lions is going to benefit from a move like this. They were already a really brilliant tactical team that looked like they had all the pieces there. Didn't particularly have tons of Krieg abusers. Obviously, A-Cores and Orpa will potentially be even buffed a little bit more, so I think they'll be better. I think actually most of the teams will be probably quite similar. There's probably not that many that are on the extremes either way, I don't think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. As I said, I mean, I think the key thing is now I can watch fucking pro Counter-Strike without being sick in my mouth. And I don't understand why it took so long. Like, you didn't even need to gut the gun to the degree you did, although I am very happy to see it because now all of the shit cunts that were relying on the Krieg to get their numbers are going to get found out. But, you know, you could have just put the money up. Like, Valve could have literally just pressed the button and gone, yeah, $3,000 is ridiculous for the best, the objectively best gun in the game.
They don't seem to get that angle, though. Like, for example, I don't believe that they reduced the M4A1S just because, for the reason I would have done it, which is, well, the reason I like the fact that it got reduced is because now you can also do, like, as a safe precaution, if you win that CT pistol, but one of your guys has the money from kills or whatever, he can buy that as a prevention against the Super AK buy, which obviously is no Super Krieg by now. That's nice. That's a good angle. I don't think that's why they did it, though. I think in their mind, they thought if you make it cheaper, more people might choose it over the M4A4 and we'll get those numbers up. So it won't just look like it currently did where every fucker used the M4A4 and there's about 1.5 players in the world who still use the silenced one, pro player. So I think they just accidentally backdoored their way into that. That's one area I find so frustrating because if we had this hypothetical community liaison type person we've always wanted in the CSGO community, that's the kind of angle we could actually have a real good discussion with them in. Instead of just being like any pleb on the server, like, just nerf all the guns I don't like, we could be like, what about if we were to increase this money for this gun in this way? It might have the following effects and therefore it could still remain in play, but we could adjust the we could build our case basically. So I think it's unfortunate that Valve doesn't really seem to have that model for the game because the game's about economy. It's about the fruits of how you use the money you make in the game. So instead of just making the raw values of damage and rate of fire and these factors what you nerf or buff, I'd like it if the economic part became more of a component. I always said it about some of the OP pistols. Some of those OP pistols that seemed like a nightmare wouldn't have been a nightmare if they just cost $300 more. If it was more of a gamble where, the times that you win with it, you'll still get the same result. The times you lose, you've just gutted your economy for another round and a half. So if you want to take that gamble with your players who have sick aim, go for it. But the point is, it needs to be a gamble. I hate it when these guns, like the Krieg in this scenario, even if you're the best AK player, why not just fucking go for a Krieg? Everyone else is doing it. That's a choice I don't want to have made. I want it to be where, I choose the AK because I'm better with an AK. Oh, you're not as good. You can choose a Krieg. It'll cost you a little bit more, but you get the Krieg. So can your team account for 3 players who have to have Kriegs? That's going to cost them a lot more in terms of money. It would give like an obvious plus minus that everyone can then make a strategic choice from.
Yeah, and I agree. Money has to be the issue. It's been that way for various points in the meta where we've seen guns that are fucking, like you say, just ridiculously underpriced for what they can do. And obviously pro players are going to gravitate towards them. I think the Valve objective of having every gun situationally purchased and viable in different positions and at different times in the game, I think it's a pipe dream if you're going to not price things correctly, because there is always going to be one gun that has more utility in more situations it's better than another gun for less money. There's always going to be an optimal mathematical equation, and it's never going to come down to what you're personally good with, what your tactical setup is, what map you're on. And we see that time and time again, that we always end up dropping into a period where certain guns are viable and certain guns are non-viable. And if you pick up the non-viable guns, you lose the round. That's just how it works. So I don't know what they can do to sort of change that. But I think thinking about pricing and thinking about the finances is definitely a better way to go than every time a gun is the preferred gun and it gets out of hand and it dominates the meta, you gut the gun so it's non-viable again and everyone goes back to what they know. That doesn't seem a great form of balancing either. That's almost like how they do things in League of Legends. One hero's overpowered, we just make them non-viable. You never see them again until they get reworked, and now they're reworked, and guess what? Now they're overpowered again. So now we get rid of them. That cycle isn't good for the game. And I don't know how you fix that, but Valve really need to look a lot more at it, and they definitely let the Krieg run on for way too long. Right, here's another story that's doing the rounds. Keeping one eye on the time here before we get to viewer questions. I wanted to get your pick on this because I know you've been very vocal about it. So there's a lot of talk about a lawsuit that's coming up. Jamppi, the Finnish player that had logged in to an account, purchased an account, a Steam account, back when he was a kid, that then went on to get VAC banned after he loaned it to a player when he was, 12 or, whatever age it was. Well, he filed a lawsuit in Finland to essentially tackle Valve directly about whether or not it's legal that they can hold him accountable and ban him essentially from competing at major tournaments. I've read the document. I had it ahead of time before DK broke the story, and then I think there was some Finnish esports site that released the documents publicly. I'll be honest, having read the full legal document, it does feel pretty thin to me, and almost anorexic actually, in terms of like the legal grounding on which it stands on. But it is an interesting landmark within Counter-Strike, I think. That
it's an important PR move at a minimum, right?
Yeah.
Bringing up an issue that otherwise is just people who get the fucking threads deleted off Reddit, basically.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of interesting stuff that comes out of this. So let's just start first of all. One of the things that came out was Jamppi made it known to the CSPPA, which is the Counter-Strike Professional Players Association, that he wanted to tackle Valve directly, potentially with legal help, but ultimately all he wanted, and the only reason he filed suit, was because he wanted communication from Valve about why he couldn't compete at majors and what the evidence they were using to make that decision was. He just wanted to know. And they wouldn't communicate with him beyond their initial 2019 email they sent him, where they said, "Sorry, it was your Steam account, your responsibility." That
basically could have been written by a fucking bot. Like, it didn't even look like a human bothered to, which, by the way, in itself is part of my issue with this whole case. Is the reason I find all topics of whether we should unban cheaters very tiresome to discuss. It's not because it's not an interesting topic. It's a brilliant topic. It's got all sorts of hypotheticals. It's one of the rare areas in fucking esports where you can bring in philosophy. It's almost like situations of morality and what should we read and what should we even aspire to as a community.
Crime and punishment, right?
Becomes incredibly uninteresting when you listen to the twats that make up Reddit and every other fucking social site, because all it becomes is about them and their ego. And because they got cheated against someone in a server one time, Richard, every cheater should be fucking hung, drawn and quartered, and their ashes should be fucking spread to the seven seas, and they should be damned to the seventh generation. And then that sort of twat is going to turn around at the end and act like that's like an intelligent, reasoned opinion that should be in any way valued or listened to, as opposed to someone essentially just emotionally spazzing about a topic that triggers them, which is really what, as far as I can tell, it is. So on this kind of a topic, I even saw when it was posted that email reply, which was, by the way, pretty condescending and compassionless as a reply. Bear in mind, this isn't just a random person. This is someone who could be a pro player. He literally has contracts that would have given him a job as a pro player. It's not just any player in the world demanding to talk to Gabe Newell personally or something. It's someone actually just reasonably reaching out and being like, listen, this is my case. I'm claiming that I gave the account to someone. They played one game. They got VAC banned. It wasn't me in any way. Can I at least, is there an appeals process? Is there a way I can go? So it's essentially being told, we here at the Verizon Wireless family appreciate your feedback and we'll be taking it into account in the very near time. Please continue. Here's a coupon, get 100 free for $100 of store credit in a future time. No, like, that's the level of email he got back. The amount of responses that were like, good, fuck him. What does he expect? Cheat once, cheat you for life. Like, well, what does he think they should personally respond? Like, the amount of NPC overwhelming nonsense I saw on this topic made it just really boring. Because I know that all the responses to this, what discussion we have now, will be the same garbage. It will be people who are so stuck in their feelings, they can't actually think about why it's unreasonable for someone who's like 12 years old to be banned for something for their entire life.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the example I always use when I try and interface with those kind of morons is that, if you've ever been a teenager and, you're out there and you're thrill seeking, you're 12 years old, you're 13 years old, and your friends are there and you like shoplift, right? And you lift a chocolate bar from the shop. If you believe that should carry the same penalty as, say, that same person then when he's like 20 years old or 25 years old breaking and entering into someone's house to steal a television, then fine. I think you're logically consistent and that's your opinion, and that's good. Wouldn't share that opinion. But the reality is most people would look at that and go, well, yeah, that'd be absurd. I mean, shoplifting as a child is nowhere near the same as being a thief as an adult. And of course, yes, that's absolutely correct. And therefore, surely we can extrapolate from the logic applied to that cheating in an online video game at 12 before you can even conceptualize the idea of a pro career. And let's also be clear, we don't have any evidence Jamppi ever cheated. I mean, that's another thing that gets casually blown over. If for example, if somebody logged into your Steam account and then used to cheat on it and your account got VAC banned, would you not feel? Of course you would. You would, and a lot of people make that excuse down the year. It's a bit of a meme, or it's my brother.
It's the equivalent of the dog eat my homework one.
Yeah, exactly. Equivalent of dog eat my homework, exactly. But there is. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that it happened. Jamppi's story has a clear timeline. All the evidence, when you look at it, points to that. Yes, somebody else was using the account.
It seemed plausible what he was saying. Yeah. It wasn't like some of the past ones I've heard where the player claims as much as this, but then when it's looked into, they're just full of shit, and that was just they thought they'd get away with it. Like this actually seemed like it wasn't that far off what he was saying. Hence why I'd like to Valve to actually give us a proper explanation that they investigated it.
And remember, famously, there was which, funnily enough, Smooya thinks I accused him of cheating because he's not very bright. But famously, this is kind of what happened to Smooya. There was an account that, to all intents and purposes, looked like it belonged to him. This was before he was a big name, before he played for any teams. And when people looked at it and looked at the IPs associated with it, it was some cunt from fucking, I don't even know, like Norway or something, was logging into the account and for whatever reason was trying to impersonate Smooya. And that's the conclusion we arrived at. So these things, but based on the evidence, and Valve certainly haven't said anything about it, or which, by the way, they probably don't give a shit and haven't even investigated it. But certainly, or based on the evidence, he gets a pass, right? So he gets on and goes on to have a pro career. Now, sure, that account never belonged to Owen, but ultimately, what's the difference we're talking about? We're punishing somebody for their actions based on the fact that, in an absence of evidence, we're just going to have a blanket rule that a Steam account is your responsibility no matter what happens. And prior to Jamppi, we had the incident with Dreamer where, he said his account got hacked after he used it in a LAN cafe, and somebody cheated on his account. Now, Valve have pretty much intimated in that case, actually, no, that's bullshit. But again, we still don't know. There's never been any form of transparency. We don't have a community manager. We don't have an esports manager. Dreamer's always maintained his innocence the entire time. And I'll just say this. If at any point your account gets compromised and someone cheats on it and Valve uphold that ban and you happen to be a pro player, I'm not going to be one of the fucking Reddit morons that are fucking saying, he should have looked after his account. His account is responsibility. That's ridiculous. That's like someone stealing your car, doing a ram raid, and you going to prison. It's madness. There is no rule. There shouldn't be a rule like that in existence, especially for pro players. And the madness is, of course, if it happens to you and you're a regular Joe and you have no stake, you just get another account. The only thing that happens to you is your Steam ID goes up. There's no penalty.
Yeah, here's another thing that's tilting the fuck out of me, by the way, is when people take that logic where they go, well, shouldn't have done it then. Or even better, when they like, I'll never understand the modern generation. This is how I know none of you have any political convictions. Because when I listen to you all politically, you're the most woke left-wing motherfuckers of all time. Then when it comes down to actual issues that involve human beings, you know, the people who would be the proletariat, you dumb fucks, you're against them in every single instance, and you're in favor of the fucking corporations. So you're literally going, well, he did sign the terms and services. Right, you're going to say that when your Reddit account gets banned, are you? By that logic, Reddit, by the way, are allowed to ban you for any reason. You wouldn't be able to do a lawsuit against them, and they could IP ban you for life. So if they did that, would you not complain? Would you go, well, it is their platform, you know, Rich, and I did sign those terms and services, so you won't find me complaining about being banned. No, they
obviously when it affects them.
Yeah,
obviously when it affects them. Also, as well, the amount of morons that were arguing that, you know, terms of service can't be illegal. I mean, that was a fucking...
It's when they think, Richard, no, I'm not even joking here. They genuinely believe, if you listen to what they're saying on Reddit, that if the terms of service had a hidden clause saying, oh, and by the way, you agree to be an indentured servant of Valve Software for the rest of your fucking adult life, that would somehow be upheld in a court of law because you pressed OK on a button at the end. They actually believe this shit. They think terms of service is like fucking the be-all, end-all. Like, it's not God right on the fucking box.
There's a lawsuit which people should look up on. Actually, it was against a website called Zappos. It's about fucking 10 years old, I want to say now. But basically, their entire terms of service was deemed to be illegal and non-binding, and it completely fucked them. It wrecked the company. It's a very famous like legal. If you're interested in this type. So the idea that terms of service just hold up immediately because you tick a box definitely doesn't work like that. In terms of service, of course, can violate it. Also worth noting in America that it's been ruled multiple times that violating terms of service is not a crime and cannot be treated as such. And yet these, you know, corporations, they like to push the line, and it's incredible how much love the corporations get.
Wild, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, like, oh, no.
These are the same idiots that 1 second later will turn around. Why have we got billionaire? Like, oh, gee, you guys can't even be consistent. They're on the same page.
No, morons.
Who am I fighting with here, guys?
But let's talk about the thing that I found alarming in all of this. Okay. Jamppi had said that the CSPPA offered him like no support on this, that they didn't want to fight his corner, and we were, and their only comment on the issue was that they are playing no part now in it because it has gone to the legal stage and they have no part in the lawsuit. But Jamppi had said that basically the CSPPA like didn't support him, didn't have his back. Now when I was doing when I was doing the Flashpoint stream as well, and I don't know if this made it to the front page of Reddit or not, Davey was on with me, and I think he's watching the chat now, and he was telling me that like he was in the CSPPA and he was never asked to vote on anything, not who represented them, not on any of the motions or statements or anything they put forward, not in any leagues. He showed me every email he'd ever received from the CSPPA as a member, and he was simply not asked on any of those issues. And what he was saying was that basically if you're a tier 1 player, you get round a table, you get your say. If you're anything but, you are simply making up the numbers, but you will not be involved in the decision making. So when I see, you know, CSPPA's had a lot of good press, and I've been party to giving them that good press. But when I see a player say, "Listen, I want to take on Valve because I believe my ban is unfair," that is absolutely the type of battle that the CSPPA should. That
affects everyone who's in the CSPPA potentially. Yeah. Or who might be in the future. This is what's so sick about that whole CSPPA exercise, is these guys apparently want credit for stuff they haven't done. Like, they just want credit for existing. Like, first and foremost, I've said this a million times, I'll keep saying it until it happens. Until the day you are willing to threaten to withhold your labor, the CSPPA is a fucking mirage in your mind. It does not exist. It is nothing, and it has literally no objective, tangible power. That is the only power it will ever have, is the ability to withdraw labor. And as long as you make it clear, which you are making it abundantly clear to the ESLs of the world, that you will not withdraw that labor, you have no power, and all you're actually saying is, can I get in on this crony capitalism? Can you just maybe let me sit at the table and I'll just look over what you do and say, yep, fine by me. And at the end, you just say I had some say in it, even though I didn't, but just say that I had some say, so I appear to have power. But then when it comes to a real case like this, where again, they have no power, by the way, because they wouldn't ever withhold all the players from Major to let these people get back in. But they could at the very least do what they're doing at the moment, which is putting on a great fucking face and getting all that free PR. Go and do that for this player. And at least let it be the case that, yeah, Valve might not unban him. They might not even listen to his case. And there might never be a lawsuit. But at a very minimum, the other pro players, who I'm assuming most on some fundamental level, based on my conversations, do agree this is bullshit, at least got to say, as a union, in a historic moment, that they were against Valve banning people forever for VAC bans when they were that young. Yeah. Wouldn't that be a cool gesture to the community? You wouldn't have any power. You wouldn't be doing anything. You'd still just be sat there wanking each other off and smelling each other's farts. But you'd at least have done a cool gesture. That's at least what you'd have done for your fellow teammates and players.
This is the thing. Like it's like you say, the withdrawal of labor is such a key. Like it is such a key component.
You were involved with union.
Yeah, I know. I was a trade union representative, and trust me, while I was never high enough up to be the guy that was like negotiating like walk-offs and stuff, there was many situations where, you know, this type of action was absolutely discussed. Or, you know, one of the things that we did talk about was what they call working to rule, which is you refuse to do unpaid overtime. You clock off the minute your shift ends. You don't do any of the additional work you don't get paid for or recognized. And you say, if you challenge that as a corporation, we'll go through the courts. And in the meantime, we will continue to withhold our labor. And, you know, this is the type of battle you got to be willing to go up against. Now, listen, I don't think Valve will move on any of this stuff.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to do anything.
But let's aim small. Let's aim small. Is it, right, especially in the current landscape, is it such a massive deal if players were to say, like, in solidarity with my fellow players, I'm not going to compete at the Valve Major until Valve bring in a transparent appeals process for banned play? You made your point. Goes down in history.
That's historic. That would be amazing.
Yeah. Now, listen, I know no one's ever going to do this. And I know majors are important, but let's be real. When you've got players like Smooya who bail before a major to settle some petty point scoring with their teammates, when you have players like Fallen say, majors don't even matter that much to me. So what, you won't take a stand and not go to a major to help your fucking fellow player, help the whole professional landscape, and maybe have some semblance of fairness? Valve want this to be a fucking esport, want to be in charge of the biggest tournaments within that fucking landscape, and yet want to have none of the apparatus that you absolutely have to have if you're a professional sport. We've got a players association that doesn't even represent all the players, even the ones on the books. It's disjointed from a company like Valve. They have meetings, they sit around a table, they eat fucking biscuits and drink coffee, and nothing gets done. It has to come from the players, and obviously we know when players are comfortable, right, they're not going to take it. Because here's what happens. Players talk about strike action. Team organizations say to them, we don't support your strike action. It's going to fuck us up with our sponsor. So we'll cut your salary or we'll cut you from the roster. So that's problem number one. And then obviously problem number two is, well, players don't even necessarily want to, like, take strike action. You know, how many players are really interested in the plights of Brax or Steel or Dazed or Jamppi now, or, you know, any of the other players that, or Dreamer, any of these other players that, like, deserve at least an appeal, deserve at least a hearing, deserve at least some clarity on why they are facing this unbelievable tyranny that they have to rule under. And all you get from Reddit and all you get from the gallery is, shouldn't have done the bad thing that they did. Yeah, but it's contextual. People are going to fuck up. People are going to make mistakes. They are going to have errors of judgment. The reality is, our lifetime bans for any of these errors at whatever age, whatever time, whatever situation you're in, does it contextually deserve a lifetime ban with no appeal? And if you say yes to that, I don't think you really understand the world around you, because that is a penalty that you would not see in any other part of society except the absolute harshest crimes. Now, the good thing about Valve and I'll give them some props, is they're not like a Riot and they're not like an Activision Blizzard, and they don't leverage the big old developer dick to keep these players banned from all tournaments like Riot would, like Activision Blizzard would. There is that. We should be thankful for small blessings. But the CSPPA needs to get on the battlefield and fight the battles that are there. And this is one of them. Valve absolutely need to be more transparent with their esports divisions in Dota, in CS, because it's making them fucking millions. You can't just roll out like the fucking God Emperor whenever you feel like it, hand down an edict, and then fuck off back inside the castle. It can't work like that. It's not reasonable. It's not justifiable. And the CSPPA, I honestly thought they'd be an organization that would be at least able to leverage the unity of players towards some common good. And like I say, I think it is such a small victory to have an appeals process for lifetime bans. It wouldn't even be worth celebrating if we didn't exist in the absurd world of esports. And the CSPPA have shown no interest. It's insane. And I've got to be honest, with all the other stuff that's been going on with the CSPPA and what Davey told me, I've got real doubts about this being a serious entity at all, Duncan. It's starting to look more and more like a paper tiger. The idea as well that they're talking about, like Scoot's talked about this, and none of this is aimed at Scott, by the way, who was just a representative and helped it get off the ground, and it's being run by new people. It was never run by him. But, the way it was always framed was, we're going to have an election and we're going to vote representatives in that the players want. And then I got union members telling me they were never asked to vote. That's insane, right? I mean, that's like a big story.
Yeah, well, the point that you made, by the way, saying it's like a paper tiger, that's the concern I have as well, by the way. Because the esports is not this clean, pure, like lake that you can see right through the transparent. It's so murky already and filled with so much fuckery that we aren't even revealing publicly. Stuff that you don't even get nailed down to be able to bring it publicly. I wouldn't put it past some of the people in the esports space in CS:GO right now to have helped make something like the CSPPA in order that there never would be a real union in that place. In order that you could hold together the only people who could have done it in essentially a toothless, like, fucking scenario where they can't actually do anything, but they give the appearance, the illusion of a response, resistance, ability for players to have a say. And in fact, the entire game all along was just to ensure they never, basically, it's like that old fucking Lenin quote. If there is going to be an opposition, we must control it. That's almost what I feel like this is becoming. Because again, forget even the idea of like voting for the people. Who the fuck are these people at the top of the CSPPA who are the non-players? Who are they? I've only heard small things about them, and every single thing I heard about them was fucking dodgy. It's that they come from other fields where shit's gone on, and there's been corruption, and like, again, these people should be nominated for good reason, right? And in theory, we should be able to talk to them. We should be able to grill them. None of this. There's no transparency for any of that stuff. CSPPA has just become one of those orgs. That's a name. And nobody apparently is the one that you're supposed to talk to. They're just a name, the CSPPA. Well, how do I contact this mythical CSPPA? How do we get confirmation of something? How does this CSPPA ever do anything? At the moment, no one knows any of this. And for I was willing to give them a pass when the EPL slot thing went down on the grounds that they haven't had a chance to cycle up it. They need to improve how they message to the public, and they're going to get in a press set of people who can talk. None of that's happened. They're still just a mysterious organization that no one knows what they do.
So, again, just to let people know what happened, this is in January of this year. There was a guy called Mad Zoland who was a member of the Danish Football Players Association. And he came in, and he is sort of the de facto leader of the organization. I don't think any elections took place for him. He is just in charge and the CEO of the player organization. There were supposedly elections to appoint a chairman and a vice chairman, and the chairman is Zipnix, and Elige is the vice chairman. Right? So I got issues with active pros in a way being in charge, because that creates its own set of problems. But I've got members telling me they weren't even asked to vote for that. Elected by who? Elected when? How many members? Like, how many more people am I going to reach out to that are going to say, like, we weren't even asked for our vote? I mean, at that point, if there is any member that their vote hasn't been solicited, this should be null and void and it should be done again.
Also, by the way,
that's how it would work.
Let's imagine, again, just as a thought exercise, that we were in a world, obviously it'd be a very different world to this one, wouldn't it? It'd be one where some of the things we were saying were true, where the scumbags who would want something like a CSPPA, but not a real one, kind of a full CSPPA that could do small things, maybe things that even ended up ultimately, if you follow the chain long enough, helping out T-Morgs or TOs, but appeared as if they were player concerns. If I wanted some organisation like that, another thing I'd want to do, Richard, is place people in key positions who were exactly the people whose character fits what I want the org to be. People who don't have a track record of speaking out. People who are fairly chilled, a bit too laid back, a bit too quick to go along with the flow of things. Basically, think of like anyone who would be a candidate for the Liberal Democrats in the UK for the fucking Prime Minister. The sort of person where they'll never be elected because they don't even have any force behind them. They seem like a fucking parishioner or something. Like, that's the sort of people you're even hearing in these key positions. They got them fucking quiet as a church mouse. What, you're the leader of the CSPPA? What? And then the vice chairman, someone who never doesn't talk. What? What is this? That's not the way any player union I'm aware of in sports is. You have the veteran who's built his whole career and therefore knows I've got to get a good deal for the lowest guy and the top guy. You have the superstar player who's got the force to bring his name and put it behind the action. You got the guy who's really charismatic and can have those meetings with the owners and can talk to them in their language. What does the CSPPA have? They have a guy from Danish football. I don't know this motherfucker from Adam. And by the way, as soon as I hear anyone's in any kind of an organization related to football, I just think it sounds corrupt as fuck, just because of the track record of my own investigations into that. Then, in terms of the people who are in charge, these are the most fucking Casper milquetoast, weak-willed motherfuckers in the scene. Why are these guys the leaders? What? There's no one better than that in all of the CSPPA. There's no one who actually has some, like, where's like some fallen type dude? Where's someone like that as a leader?
Well, so there's a board of players that supports the chairman, and they include Taco, Chris J, Tarek, NBK, and Nothing are on there. So there's some big personalities there, I guess. But
what do they decide?
already,
Whether it's fucking bourbons or custard creams at the next meeting?
Yeah, right. This is the thing. We have no idea about what the working.
No one does.
Yeah. So it's crazy to me. And as I said, there are problems with current players being in leadership roles within a union. And there's definitely, biases that can incur. For example, why would an Astralis player be inclined to potentially introduce or potentially withdraw their labor to support a Finnish talent coming in that could go to a team like ENCE and then maybe be a rival to them, not just in terms of the server, but like regionally, essentially.
You're incentivized not to help.
Yes, absolutely. So that whether they would or not, but I mean, I guess the proof in the pudding is in the eating. Jamppi's been very quiet about it. One thing I'll give Jamppi is credit, for a young lad. He hasn't been beating his chest. He hasn't been crying. He wasn't doing like what Kaylee was doing, where he was like tweeting about, I will get vengeance on Valve. Like he was fucking Liam Neeson and losing his mind. Jamppi's doing it quietly. He's like trying to downplay this. I think because ultimately it ends with a loss. But I wish him well. I hope we just get a definitive statement from Valve. I hope they can just like see it within themselves to understand that when you are withdrawing something like this from somebody, and let's be clear, it does bleed into other areas of his life because he didn't get his contract with OG. This is part of the legal documents that cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. He doesn't get picked up because they can't play at the majors, and sponsors want him to go at the majors, and orgs want to go at the majors, and other players want him to go at the majors. The answer here is, if you want to fucking actually get to a world where people like Steel and Brax and Jamppi and Dreamer and all that can come out, you just say, fuck the Valve tournaments. We will not play in them. Problem fixed, right? I mean, there's plenty of $1 million tournaments now. Even Flashpoint's putting up $1 million, brand new league, right? You can get the money if you want. You won't ever win a major, but if all the top teams just refuse to go to majors and say we won't participate in Valve events till they have some reasonable framework, what are Valve going to do? Imagine the embarrassment of putting on a major and no one goes, and you have to crown Bad News Bears the major winners because they were the only people that sort of gave a fuck and wanted to be scabs, you know? So all the MDL teams are end up there because you want to put on a show. Or Valve have to cancel it and say, well, we're not doing the majors no more. Fine. It doesn't really hurt the ecosystem in the grand scheme of things. There's so much money in Counter-Strike. The thing that I would worry is that that might lead into some like sort of petulant revenge, you know, from Valve. They might start wanting to get involved with who can and can't have licenses. But honestly,
this is also why I
players
say
are holding
that,
cards here.
This is why even just having the CSPPA say, we, the CSPPA, urge Valve Software to begin an appeals process whereby, you know, we can have a fair and reasonable trial of people who've been accused credibly or uncredibly, whatever scenario you want to play it as, of being cheaters to test whether they, you know, can be rehabilitated back in the pro scene. The reason why that would also be historic, even if it didn't literally do something, is we're at the point where that in itself can get press. That might be in mainstream like newspapers. That might actually be something that can at least get Valve's eye when they see it permeating beyond the wider world. Because in the same world where everyone at the moment gets all these W's from esports, every time it's in the mainstream, it's a big emerging sector and you should involve it. Well, guess what? Valve doesn't want to hear that investors now think that one of the games you invest into has all these problems and has no transparency, while League of Legends has got a whole LCS structure and they've got their own player unions there, and Overwatch League has whatever the fuck they claim to have. Like, it actually makes Valve look like small potatoes, like they're amateur hour. So at a very minimum, just the gesture, like I say, would be very well appreciated, I think.
Yeah, and that's all. Yeah, and listen, that's all I want as well, mate. I'm exactly the same as you. The thing that upsets me isn't the decision. It's the fucking silence. It's the lack of clarity. It's the desire to have your cake and eat it. Thanks, ESL and everyone else in the scene. And thanks, Thorin, and thanks, Richard, and thanks all the players, and thanks every TO for building a structural framework that makes the majors have meaning, that actually makes us money for our game, that has added longevity to the game, that has made the game. We're still going up, by the way. Thought the closed beta of Valorant was meant to stop that. We're still going up. We're at 1.26 million now. We're closing in on the record for Valve games. Thanks for all of that. But by the way, we get final say in everything, but you will not hear from us, nor will you receive anything from us until something bad is happening and it fucking behooves us to come and fuck up your shit. That is a ridiculous, greedy, narcissistic, egotistical, deluded stance to have. And it's the stance every game developer has. I don't know if I'm being, like, romantic, but I used to believe Valve were better than that. You know, I remember when they were coming in 2012, 2013, coming to events, getting player feedback, holding meetings. We're trying to give you feedback now and you're fucking not there. You're pissing about with fucking VR machines in your office and you've got a fully functioning esport here that you have essentially turned your back on. Great, we had an operation. Great, we had a case. Great, we've got new maps. This is like the first time, by the way, they have consistently put out a string of content, but they still have no attachment to the esports scene of things except to come in and go, yeah, you can't have a license because you're doing something we don't like. Right, bye, see you next year, Here's a major. You will lose money on this because we don't care about your overheads. Like, this is outrageous. Like, everybody should be angry about it. We got one of the biggest esports in the world, and it is happening despite Valve, not because of it. There is no other situation like that in esports. It's madness. And we need organizations like the CSPPA, like any group of people, to be sort of trying to nudge Valve in the right direction, to just give us our due. We don't want, like, we're not asking for millions. We're not asking for a TI. We're just asking for some sort of, like, esports community manager at your end to communicate with and give us some idea about where we can take things on the esports side of things, including player appeals and stuff like this. No, a bridge too far. We're asking for too much. I can't. I've championed Valve for years, as you know, Duncan, and said that, and I'll still stand by it. I'd rather have a Valve than a Riot.
Yeah, of course.
But they're so far behind where they need to be for the esport and product that they've got that it's embarrassing and borderline offensive now. It really is. And they got to change. They got to fucking get this shit together and realize This could be big. Valorant's round the corner, by the way, and Riot are using the same fucking shit that they did last time, which, of course, everyone's going to get duped by again because they're morons. Tell me if this sounds familiar, Duncan. We aren't creating our own league to begin, but we will be inviting select partners to run tournaments for us, major tournaments for us, and we will be watching with great interest where that goes. Oh, you mean like you did for League of Legends? You used MLG, you used ESL, you used fucking DreamHack, and then as soon as your game blew up, you went, right, we're bringing that all in-house now. You don't get to make any money from our game. You want to do a road show? What, you're not willing to suck our dick? You're not willing to cancel Dota tournaments? Nah, sorry then, we're having all of that. People are going to get got again with this shit.
Oh, they will.
And where's Valve and Counter-Strike and all of this? Fucking madness. Makes me sick to watch my game have to struggle like this. Right, anyway, let's get to the player questions. We're coming to the Patron questions. We're coming to the end of the podcast. So let's do it. Remember, if you give $50 or more to our Patreon, you get to ask a question and shape the last 30 minutes or so of the show. So, AliceTheAlchemist, the regular, one of the few regulars that actually keeps me sane in the chat when I'm losing my mind, like I was the other day with the Flashpoint stream. Hey, Rich, without giving too much away, if at all, I'm curious how both you and Thorin were able to develop and hone your journalistic craft. Are there things that you guys have read or learned throughout your lives that fostered that growth and brilliance? I'm asking because I aspire to be a writer, maybe a novelist, and although it isn't the same as journalism, I'm in admiration for both the work you produce in terms of its sophistication and depth. Well, that's an incredibly glowing praise. And the first thing I'll say off the bat, definitely don't look to us for your cues. There's certainly much better writers and talented people out there to take your cues from. I'll let you go first on this, Duncan, because I was waffling a bit at the end.
Well, I was always a big fan of like a quote Christopher Hitchens had, where I remember I watched an interview once where they like went to his house in DC where he lived and he showed you like, his bookshelves. And then what he would explain was like, what's on his bookshelves. So he would be like, I've got all of P.G. Wodehouse and all, George Orwell, like his favorite writers. And one of the things he said was that a principle he used was as someone who aspires to be a writer, you should always be reading people whose writing is so much better than yours that it literally makes you think, why do I even bother? Because the point is, if you don't do that, if you don't essentially have someone who's way out ahead of you, who you aren't even close to touching, you will get complacent. And even worse than that, you might even be stupid enough, like some of the shit heel SJW journalists I see in esports, to think that just having a degree and a job journalist makes you fucking sick at your job. One of the things I love is, I've always said, if I'd have competed with the people in like 2001 when I started, I wouldn't even be here now. I would have been left behind years before, because obviously people came after me who had way more training and came from a real writing background. But what I had to do was I had to compete against my own skill set and have to try and up that all the time. And so by being someone who read stuff that's way, way better, real journalists, people who were working in domains that are eminently more serious than esports, it allowed me to see what's possible and to see where I can level my own game up. And in fact, one of the areas I've often thought I did a good job in my own work was I was somewhat ahead of the curve on treating what were just people playing video games as if it was a serious sport, as if it had that gravitas. Well, if I'd have just gone by the tone of the scene, that wouldn't be the case. People just took it as sort of a frivolous, fun thing. So I'd say that's a pretty good piece of advice. Just constantly be finding people who you read it and they're just way better than you, because it'll always keep you in check. It means that you don't have to have someone tell you just an esports. No, you want to be more, but at the same time, you are just that. So it's always nice to have something that can put you in your place, in a sense.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that thing. I mean, one of the things that I was getting a lot of like mockery for, I guess, when I first started was like, why are you taking this so serious? Like, I came from being a features writer. So for me, a feature was 3,000 words. Like, anything less than that, what the fuck are you doing? Like, it's like a column at that point, And so I was writing features, and people going, why are you writing 3,000 words about this? And I'm like, because that's like an industry standard. I mean, I think that's the amount of time that it takes to at least to some degree explore the topic in a successful way. But people, you can imagine what it was like in like 2005. No one wanted to read 3,000 words in general in our space, let alone even about our space. There would be ridiculous things. I would find like obscure teams, that people didn't know about, and we're never going to do anything realistically, but I would write about them as if they had that opportunity and they were a professional team. I would treat it seriously, and people would get very upset. Why are you writing about them? Well, because I want to, and I can, and I think it's interesting. Don't you like the article? I won't even read it. Why would I read about them? Okay, brilliant. Fair critique. So I think the thing you have to do is, I mean, first of all, when it comes to writing, you just got to do it. It's just like, you just have to.
You got to fail a lot before you even know what you're not good at. Like you can't.
Yeah,
you'll never be able to read
it.
a book and be good at it from day one. It's never gonna happen.
Yeah, you have to write a ton of garbage. I mean, that's just rule number one. Like, you just got to sit down and grind it out until you find a rhythm and a method that works for you. And then on top of that, you have to, get it out there, which is great these days because you can self-publish and deal with the absolute unrelenting critique that you're gonna get, because every moron that can barely string together a Reddit comment thinks that they are a better journalist and a better writer than you and have a better understanding of all of the mechanics, even though their English is unbelievably subpar and their intellect is beneath even that. But you just have to kind of, that will be your audience. I mean, the thing that I always struggle with is, like I say, I'm very much in that GG Allen headspace a lot of the time doing what I do, in that the audience is my enemy, is his famous quote. And, I've just started writing about Valorant today, which must be like maybe my 30th or 40th esport I've ever covered. And immediately I have found yet another community that don't read past the headline, another community that don't understand nuance, another community that doesn't want to be informed, that doesn't want to have their preconceptions challenged. Brilliant. I've been doing that now for 2 decades. It's fucking, it would depress me if I didn't think it had some inherent value. So yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, the idea is just do it, and never get wrapped up. Like, critique can be good, but understand it has to come from a source you respect. Understand that the average pleb, their critique is meaningless, and equally their praise is meaningless. If you're the type of person that's going to get waylaid by like a few Reddit threads going, "Oh my god, look at this guy's articles, look how good they are a Medium," you're gonna stumble and fall as well, and you're not gonna push yourself, and you're not gonna do good. I see a lot of interviewers and content creators that fall into that, where it's like, "Oh my god, just found this guy's videos and they're so good," and then they go, "Oh my god, thanks for the Reddit thread," and it's like, listen, you can't sit in an echo chamber huffing your own farts all the time. Like, I think writing's about challenging yourself as much as it is challenging the reader in a lot of ways. So yeah, I don't know if any of that's helpful, but it's all true. Jyse, what is your opinion for after-hours gaming leagues as a concept to grow the esports base within a country? This league exists already in Finland and has seen massive interest, especially in Counter, with 171 teams partaking in the 5th season. Teams range from taxi drivers and social workers to IT companies. Could this kind of thing help drive more money to esports if utilized properly? So I assume what you mean by that, Jyse, is like, yeah, people that work together sort of play after hours and come together and do it as like a team building exercise or just a way to relax and stuff like that.
Sounds like equivalent to playing in like a 5-a-side football league or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, there was already something like this in the UK. I had a consultancy for it, and basically what they were doing was they would go into like, it was like a team building thing, and they would go into companies and they would set you up to play an esport, where you would have to learn it. You would spend an hour or two learning it from someone that was competent at the game, and then you would have to like play against each other. You know how it is.
That premise sounds so flawed, though. Could you imagine
of course.
the twat from your office is now baiting you in CS fucking next season?
I know, yeah.
Like, this, like, as much as that sounds like it could bring everyone together, it could also inherently, like, could you even imagine playing League of Legends with some of the content?
You're baiting cunts! Yeah, it'd be unreal.
It'd be a nightmare.
Just destroy morale. Like, CS definitely isn't the game for that at all.
No, exactly.
But anyway, the reality is, like, I don't know. It never really took off as a concept. And I think that there's nothing in there's no additional value in introducing stuff like that to people at work, because I think honestly, these days, whatever the generation, I think people get home and video game anyway. I think, and it just depends what it is. I think, like, maybe there's not a lot of people playing 5-side Counter-Strike online on PC when they get back, but they come back, they jump on the Xbox, you know, they play Call of Duty, they do whatever. It's become so ubiquitous culturally that, which is another reason why it's absurd when people say that gaming is inherently negative and it turns you into school shooters and gaming addicts. It's like, well, I guess the whole world's at risk for that then, because you are not going to find many people that haven't played a video game in some capacity, even in countries where that was 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been an economic reality that was possible. So I don't know. I don't think there's any extra value in that. I don't think it would bring any extra money to esports, except a few consultancy grifters, terrible false LinkedIn profile, personally.
Like, in general, I do like the idea of grassroots things in Counter-Strike, because I do think that's one thing that unfortunately didn't really transition to CSGO. That was a thing in Counter-Strike. So we don't really have a lot, like, you can't really start at zero. You have to basically just go and somehow get your way to a semi-pro team, which in itself is very difficult right now. But
yeah,
I also don't know that I actually care about one of these things, because it would be so far below where I'm following any esport that it wouldn't really ever connect with it. So I don't even know that it would grow the esport that much. Like you say, I think everyone just plays games anyway. Best case scenario, maybe this is something that actually would be a Valve thing. Like if Valve wanted to promote their game to older players or something, maybe that's an angle they can go with. So I don't think it really matters for esports though.
Yeah. I agree. Although, you know, if I got like some big fat contract to go in and do commentary on you know, on one of these events, like at some fucking company, I'd do it. I actually did an internal one when I was working at Turner Sports. I actually did one internally.
I thought you were going to say you get a big contract to go in and you'd be sort of like the David Brent, like, okay, people, right, the team that plays together, stays together, you're going to take the, you know, like...
Yeah. No, mate, I'd do that too, for money. That'd be fucking sick. I'd love doing that, like just bullshitting people. Yeah, I'm an esports expert, so yeah, it'd be great. But yeah, I did one for Turner. There was like a fighting games tournament they did internally, and I did the commentary for it there. So yeah, that was great. Lots of fun. Treasured memories. ReykjavikOnSteam, which InfoWars supplements would alter your mind to be the same as Anders? Well, the first thing you have to say is the InfoWars supplements contain absolutely nothing that isn't in almost any other food substance known to man, and they charge a huge markup for them. To get into Anders' mind, it couldn't be a supplement. It would have to be some form of hard drug. I think perhaps a blend of some form of psilocybin and an opioid of some sort. I think the slow meditative trip, I think, would put you there. What do you think, Duncan?
Yeah, the problem is that you have to realize all those supplements, as far as I can tell, it's just basic shit, isn't it? Like, it just keeps your iron in your blood supply up, or fucking vitamin C or something. It's just basic shit, isn't it? It's not, it's obviously no limitless pill out there, is it?
It was like when they did that one where it was like on InfoWars, where it was like, don't have low testosterone, don't become a soy boy, take this male enhancement pill, and then on the back contains soy. It's like, you know, it's a fucking joke. Like, so.
I will say that Anders, just in case you were wondering how much of his personality is a meme, he does unironically order products from on it. That's not a joke. He actually does order those things from that Joe Rogan company where he's like,
wait,
the nootropics are changing my mental. And it's like,
really?
are they, you absolute raged cunt, or are you just a fucking reamed out Danish commentator like, I think it's having an effect. Have more money, Joe Rogan. So I'd just say, just to be comedic, I would just say that I would like to take a supplement made of atrazine and just explore the possibilities of my sexual orientation, because, you know, Twitter and that, think about politics, think about the joke I'm making there. It's obvious, isn't it? There you go. If you know what I'm talking about, then just Google it. It's a
so wait, he orders shroom tech.
I believe he's into all that shit, mate. Yeah.
What's in shroom tech?
Just cordyceps mushroom that helps you with like recovery from fucking working out or whatever. I don't know.
Mate, cordyceps is what gets everyone in fucking The Last of Us. Like, it turns you into a zombie, doesn't it? Like, Anders better watch out, man. You don't want that shit. That's the zombie mushroom fungus. Takes over your brain.
Listen,
Probably what happens.
Anders is the canary in the coal mine. A lot of
yeah,
that
real
shit.
Anders is dead. It's the cordyceps that's been talking.
Exactly.
Yeah, fuck it. Buttpounder420. How many gallons of
Here we go. Read the whole question first.
Yeah, how many?
that could have had so many bad
It's okay,
endings.
it's fine. How many gallons of walrus cum do I have to chug in order to get Pansy to start casting CS games again?
As far as I know, I mean, I've asked her this myself over the last few years.
Yeah.
As far as I know, she would like to be a CS commentator. I know she misses the game. I know it's one she loves to do.
This is
It's
her
just
game,
that
yeah, absolutely.
At the moment, like, I mean, I actually do personally think if there was LANs again, now is the year when you really can just come back into the game and you can break it. Like, there's almost no duos left at this point in time, and good riddance to some of them. Like, some of them had to go. It was the end. So I do think it would be possible to come in now. It's just at the moment, she's in a position, as far as I know, in her career, which is really tricky, which is in another game, you're one of the main people. You're getting a really good set of career circumstances. And so even if you know that doesn't necessarily have the future you want it to have, it's hard to say no to that when you've worked for so long and you've been grinding and you kept hitting a certain ceiling in another game. So it's all well and good us telling you, oh, if you come back now, you'll get past where you were stuck before. We don't really know that. We can't promise you that. So at the moment, I feel like maybe a year or two away, if it's still around as a massive game, we can maybe have Pansy back.
I mean, look, personally, I think it speaks volumes about how much she even loves the game that she would consider it, given how the community treated her in her time here. I mean, like I've said it a bunch, the criticism was just so unjust towards her, and it was at similar levels of criticism. It was in a lot of it unquestionably predicated on the fact that she's a girl, like just not just not even up for debate.
People acted as though, like, I'm trying to think when she stopped doing events. I'm going to think maybe 2018. If in 2018 was when she stopped doing the really big events, people were acting in Reddit threads in 2018 like she just started a year before and she was there from like just the fact she was a woman, as opposed to like being at that point in time, a mega veteran Counter-Strike commentator. Notice I said veteran Counter-Strike, not just esports. At that point, she'd done Counter-Strike since the beginning of CSGO. So like the idea she
was right there at the start.
Is mental,
I remember it distinctly. And you know, like, not just that though, like, she should be the incel's fucking dream, right? She should be the incel's dream, because all of the things that people use to beat gamers over the head with, she absolutely rejects the premise. She went and competed with guys in Call of Duty and was very, very good and played on top teams. She said she didn't think there should be segregation. I mean, that's an argument a lot of these incels like to make. I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. I don't even necessarily agree with her idea on that. We've talked about it many times. But that's what she believes. And you know what? She went out there and she competed and she excelled. Good for her. Then she came over and doing CS and doing commentary and never complained once about, oh, I'm not getting a gig because I'm a woman. It's the old boys club. It's sexist. She never complained once. Grinded away, honed her craft, started getting top level gigs because of her talent and not because of her gender. When in 2015, that famous picture of us all at Cluj-Napoca was published in some Swedish shit rag going, look at the one esports event, 3 weeks, 15 commentators, all men. You know, it was like some horror movie. Pansy came out and said, they're the best guys for the job and you should show me anything different. Every time some fucking bleeding heart has tried to hold her up and go, yeah, but Pansy, you had it tough, didn't you? She goes, leave me the fuck out of this. Like, I love all those guys. Fuck you. She's done nothing but been loyal to the fucking scene, loyal to everyone in it, and has contributed some unbelievable moments. And then, when, for whatever reason, she decides to go into PUBG, and I can't speak to her mind. I don't know if it was because of the Reddit threads. I don't know if it was bullying. I don't know if it was more lucrative for her to go over there. Who knows? I'm not one to speak on her behalf. But regardless, she felt she'd be better off there. And then people are like, yeah, no more Pansy. And as always, with you cunts, with your short memories, everyone wants them back once they're gone. You all wanted Semler back. You all want a Pansy back. You know, whenever people leave, you all want them back. But you shit on them when they're here, but you all want them back. Because you realize, actually, there was something there. There was clearly something there for you to be engaged so much to hate them to the degree you did. You weirdo fucking obsessed. So, Pansy, for me, she's gone and already done a Valorant event with Puckett. And she's playing Valorant, and by the way, also wrecking people and getting flamed and posting clips and laughing about it because that's just who she is, rather than crying about it and saying, "Look at what happens when you're a girl." Not doing any of that. She's just going, "Look at this shit cunt," you know, because she's got a backbone like almost no one else in esports. If I was her, I'd just go make all the money in Valorant. She'll be a solid pick. She can cast that. She's done multiple FPS titles. She can clearly play it. She's clearly putting time in it. Why the fuck would I come back to Counter-Strike to get shit on by incels? Just, you know. So if she does come back, credit to her fucking love of the game. Because even I don't feel it that strong.
We don't deserve her, put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt, like. Jdubs, you referenced a lot of coronavirus-related financial issues going on amongst top organizations. How soon do you expect the first major player or team sale, and how many top orgs do you expect will have to sell pieces when all is said and done? You tweeted something about this today, didn't you, Dunk? I know you might not be able to allude or expand upon it.
Oh,
it might be predicated on
I'll go ahead and
info.
I'll give you a quick timeline. I would say within 3 months, you'll see a top 10 lineup go from one org to another. You'll see some big high profile players go from some of these teams to other teams. Could be amongst EPL teams, could be from EPL to Flashpoint. I don't think there'll be much going for Flashpoint to EPL because obviously the worst teams generally. I think you've already basically seen the effect. It's just these people are clever at marketing. So Astralis got ahead of it. They said that their org's doing a voluntary 30% cut. Yeah, that's as opposed to just not pay people and go out of fucking business. You're not doing that just for fun. No one's doing that because it's awesome. And they thought, you know what, we are paid too much at Astralis. No, Nicola Nyam doesn't wake up one day and just slash his own money to down to 50%, does it? No, it's because there's problems within the organization. And that was already an organization that seemed like they were leveraged to the fucking hilt. So there's another thing. There's also people where it's not that they would have been in trouble this year. It's that they had to keep it afloat this year. So when they come for their next round of investment, it ain't there. Or the person who was going to invest in them doesn't even have the money anymore. Maybe his business was something that was affected by the coronavirus. Maybe he ran a fucking theater chain. Maybe he had a series of restaurants that those people are at shower lock. They don't have any money anymore. So I think basically within months, you'll start to see some big moves. And if things go the way I think they could, by the time the next major even comes, even the whole who's in which leagues might be very interesting because, the orgs assigned to those leagues, the players aren't. Like, those players can be bought and can move freely. So I think there'll be some big stuff within months. I think what's happened is this was always basically the whole premise of why Flashpoint wanted to battle against EPL in this way. It's just that our time frame was like 3 years, maybe, Now it could be this year. In fact, I think it will be. I think some people have to hit the go button to sell. And as a result, some people who have a lot of money and are very well funded should be smart enough to make the moves to buy those players right now when they're going to be as cheap as they will ever be, at least in the current climate.
Yeah, I echo all of that, and we'll just say that you're going to find out which organizations have kind of been cruising by, relying on that, like, VC money or, have partnered with investors that aren't really serious about the space, because the economic downturn we're about to go into off the back of the COVID stuff is going to test a lot of people's resolve about whether or not they want to hold on to an asset that's going to be hemorrhaging cash at a time when we're in a fucking global recession that might have no end in sight. So there will be people who are like, listen, players are assets, sell them. Brands are assets, sell that. Sell everything, sell it all, and they'll walk away. And as a result of that, the people who do believe in the esports project, they're gonna pick up for a fucking song. It's gonna be a very interesting time, and I can realistically see some very shocking moves coming up over the course of certainly before Christmas.
When me and you have intimated in the past that there are enormous names in the Counter-Strike space, as in team names, that do not have the kind of structure financially or backing that the fan would assume they would because of their history and their success and, how legendary they are. That was just something that we were telling you was interesting info before. You won't even need to take our word for it. You will see when some of these teams sell and who they sell, what was really going on. And as a final thing to say on that topic, you will find that a lot of orgs who've played the stupidest card of all time in marketing, in my opinion, which is I do it because my players are my family and we do it together. You'll find out that they are literally now the person selling their fucking family on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question. SunmaidRaisins asks, with the introduction of agent skins, etc., should Valve also add the option of uploading your own face to stretch it onto an agent. This would be useful, as if you were Ronaldinho, you could jiggle pink angles with your teeth.
Here's the obvious joke that none of you have thought of. Wouldn't that make Dead Fox's agent the most ridiculous one of all time? It'd just be a tiny little face.
Yeah, it's got a tiny face. Like, it's ridiculous.
It'd be so mental, wouldn't it?
Listen, I think it'd be great to...
As someone who's used OBS a lot, someone needs to grab Dead Fox's face and press, I think, isn't it Control, Sam? Control, and drag the box out. Like, there you go. Whoever did that, listen, I understand when you put the image in sometimes, it just goes in like that, but just drag it out and it'll expand out across the square, the circumference of his face.
No, but like, so with this, I'd love to see more levels of customization in Counter-Strike, but I think the reality is you can't...
I don't want to see your head pop around the fucking corner when I'm playing CS:GO.
Yeah. No, obviously you couldn't do it for matchmaking, but you know what? I'd like to see shit like that for tournaments. Like, I think that'd be baller as fuck. You know, if people had like you're in a we'll use Team Liquid as an example. The Team Liquid players had like, you know, so you only saw it at home. It didn't affect anything in game, but they had Team Liquid jerseys. They had their fucking faces on the edge.
Dead Fox, that sounds.
Oh man, it's unreal.
Are you showing it on screen? It's so because the problem is, like, even though it's supposed to be ridiculously over the top, he almost does have a face like that, doesn't he? It's not
as far as I'm concerned, that is a perfect like for like fucking life replica of his actual face. It's ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, I'd like to see something like that in a tournament. I think that could be cool. I think I don't know what the technology would be like or how good it would look, but I like the idea of having a bit more customizable stuff, so it's a little bit more recognizable between the teams. And, you know, one of the only good things about CGS was those, like, sure, they chose basketball jerseys, which is really stupid, but it was kind of cool having your colors and your logos and all that on your on the tees that were running around. Sure. I'm surprised more of that hasn't been done in the CS:GO era, frankly. But yeah, I mean, player faces, it'd be great, but I don't think it'll happen.
Nah.
And yeah, right. Let's wrap it up then. So obviously a shout out to sponsors .com, go to .com/RLS. And be sure as well to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel CS:GO. I've got another interview coming out there at some point later this month. Might even be 2 this month. Although I'm asking them because I want to interview a Dota guy as well for the Dota channel, but it might be 2 CS guys. We'll wait and see. But anyway, go and subscribe to it. It's great content, and make sure you have an account at the site. So next time I'm tweeting my predictions, you can go basically predict the opposite to me and make some money, because I'm on about 5%, by the way, Duncan, in Flashpoint. It's not even fucking funny. My prediction rate is worse than yours in Flashpoint. First of all, I've always bet against MIBR, right? So, because you would, but gone horribly wrong. And then every game that's a 50-50, I've lost. It's impressive, actually. But anyway, so yeah, go and support them. And of course, shout out to our patron. $100 patrons, Jerky's Minion, AliceTheAlchemist, Madams, ReykjavikOnSteam, and our $50 patrons, Benakagi Assassin, Buttpounder420, Carve, Colin Penny, Cathal, Flacksmith, Jdubs, Jyse, Lipscomb Davis, Madsen, Marcus Kiumpar, Mike Feedme, Miss Alcoholic, Nikolai Lundgreen, Sard Sawar, SunmaidRaisins, TC Owens, Tobias Bernasconi, and Watch Doge. Thanks a lot for tuning in to By the Numbers. I'll probably be streaming at some point tomorrow. So until then, take care of yourselves.